Chapter 280. Anatole didn't know why Mr. Sullivan, who gave him a mysterious feeling, brought him to this place. In Anatole's view, this place was just a very ordinary house, but Sullivan asked him if he remembered anything after coming here. Anatole knew that Sullivan was talking about his amnesia. Anatole felt that he didn't forget anything, but whether it was Sullivan's words and deeds, some of the bishop's words, or even the sudden breaking of his cross, his rational analysis led him to the conclusion that he really forgot something. "I'm sorry, Mr. Sullivan, I didn't remember anything." Anatole shook his head. Sullivan nodded as if he had expected this. "It's not just you. The people who live nearby don't know who originally lived in this house." Anatole asked curiously, "Who used to live here?" Sullivan said slowly, "It was a widower with a 10-year-old child. They should have just left for a few days because some food in the refrigerator is still in the preservation period. But," seeing that Sullivan paused here, Anatole suddenly became more attentive. Sullivan looked at the house in front of him at this time, seeming to be puzzled. "We can't find the whereabouts of the father and son. It's like they disappeared from the world." Anatole frowned. If they were just ordinary people, how could they hide from the eyes of the monastery? "I'm afraid they are not ordinary people." Sullivan stared at Anatole with great meaning. Anatole didn't know whether it was an illusion or not. At the moment when their eyes met, Anatole seemed to feel some slight fear from Mr. Sullivan's eyes. "Anatole, you need to go with me to the monastery's headquarters," Sullivan suddenly said. But Anatole, who had just graduated from the monastery and had just been appointed here, was very puzzled. Sullivan said indifferently, "There are more restrictions on my body. I can't use any complete divine spells in this place. So I can only go to your monastery, where I can release my magic to my heart's content." Anatole was startled, because he heard Sullivan just say, "Your monastery?" The two priests who had just left did not know that a pair of eyes had been watching them from the door of the house they had been observing all this time. Luocchio was sitting on a chair in front of the house. Yu Yi, who had been scrolling through his phone, was not here. Of course, it wasn't that Luocchio deliberately didn't want her to be here. She just woke up early to prepare breakfast and went to the supermarket to buy things. Luocchio was no longer in the hotel where he first lived. After Oleg and Antonio left Moscow quietly, they moved in here as a temporary place to stay. It was not that the hotel apartment prepared by Miss Maid was not good. However, he felt that it was more tasteful to stay here. For example, the rocking chair in the corridor in front of the door made him feel like he didn't want to move. The hotel apartment didn't seem to give him that kind of experience. There was a remnant taste of happiness here when Kamala was still reborn. "All of you." After the two priests left completely, Luocchio looked up at the morning sky. In human cognition, there seemed to be something in the sky. But Luocchio, who had seen the club's old account books, was very clear that there was nothing in it. It existed, but it was not in the sky nor on the ground. Heaven still needs 3 more years. Luocchio stretched and stood up from the chair. He put on the headset of his mobile phone, then gently kicked his shoes, jogging out of the road outside, along the road of the community, running all the way. Such a morning was very suitable for jogging. On the way, Luocchio met a lot of people who also chose this time to jog on the road. People who liked sports seemed to be full of enthusiasm in their lives. He met a lot of people who greeted him, men and women of all shapes and sizes. They might be enjoying the scenery along the road. In their eyes, these scenery were the colors of figures. Luocchio didn't know. He had the concept of color, but to him, all colors seemed to be a single hue. They were mixed together in a messy manner, seemingly with a pattern, but also without a pattern. The whole world seemed to have turned into a world of black and white. However, he suddenly slowed down his pace and finally arrived in front of an old house. It was a painting painted on the wall of someone's house. It would be more appropriate to call it graffiti. The graffiti was not colorful, far from the bright graffiti on the street, which could attract people's attention. It was also not the kind of thing with a sense of irony, which could strongly express the graffiti owner's dissatisfaction with society, which could resonate with people in society. It was just a simple sketch of a city on a brown wall using black lines. But this city was not drawn according to scale. It was distorted, just like the reflection of the city in a mirror. The straight buildings became fat, and the neat roads became crooked. Luoqiu reached out and touched the wall, then pinched his finger. It didn't look like it was drawn with charcoal, but more like it was drawn with charcoal. The lines were rough. There was a period of time when I would pass by here every day. Suddenly, someone spoke behind Luoqiu. Luoqiu turned his head and saw a man wearing a mask and a cap, dressed in running clothes. It should be a middle-aged man. He gave off a very robust feeling. Luoqiu just glanced at it, then raised his head and took 2 steps back, so that he could take in the whole painting. The middle-aged man behind him also stopped here and looked up, quietly looking at the distorted Moscow on the wall. He suddenly said, "This painting is not finished." "Yes." Luoqiu nodded. The man seemed to be a little regretful. "About a year ago? I started to run around here in the morning. Occasionally, I saw a young man painting here. It was in the winter, so I had a deep impression of him. His clothes were very thin, and his face was very bad, like a homeless person. But he didn't seem to feel cold at all. He was only holding a piece of charcoal. When I saw it, the painting had already drawn a building. He seemed to be telling a story that he rarely shared with people, a story that was shared with strangers. I observed him for several days. One day, I couldn't help but go up and ask him. The man with a mask and a cap looked at Luoqiu at this time and seemed to smile. I asked him why he didn't burn the charcoal in his hand to warm himself when it was so cold. "What did he say?" Luoqiu asked casually. "He didn't answer me." The man shook his head, but he asked me a question. He said, "Do you have a dream?" "Dream?" Luoqiu thought. The man also nodded casually. "Yes, dream. To be honest, I don't know if I have a dream or not. But later, I would always take some time to run around here for a while. On one hand, it was to exercise, on the other hand, I think I probably wanted to see how long this guy could persist." He shook his head. "Unfortunately, this painting was not finished. I haven't seen him for a long time. However, I would still run here occasionally, thinking that maybe I would meet this guy again and take a good look at this unfinished painting. It is fascinating." Luoqiu smiled. The man also said softly, "Yes. Looking at this unfinished and distorted city, it always gives me a different feeling, as if it is always on guard against me. I can't let myself live in such a distorted city." We talked about some boring topics." "Nothing." Luoqiu shook his head. The man began to run. He suddenly reached out and patted Luoqiu's shoulder. "Young man, you are from China, right? I have been to this country several times. It's a very good country. But since you can speak Russian so well, you may consider staying here to develop yourself. Young man, there will always be opportunities. It's the same wherever I stay." Luoqiu shook his head. The man gave a start and didn't seem to care about the meaning of this sentence. He nodded and ran away. But not long after he ran out, a black car slowly followed behind him. Luoqiu turned around and looked at the graffiti on the wall. This was actually a painting painted by Yuri. But he was now in the manner of the Typica family. Perhaps he was greeting Miss Anna, who was brought back last night. Dream. Chapter 281. Different from the bad treatment she had imagined, she was treated like a princess, except for freedom. Anna opened a small corner of the curtain, looking at the outside environment. Just below the room, 2 men were guarding. Similarly, there were guards outside the door of the room. Her clothes had already been changed under the maid's unyielding attitude, and her entire body had been checked thoroughly. Anna had no way to contact Ephraim, let alone the outside world. So her current situation was forbidden. She didn't even know whether Ephraim had seen Yuri's appearance through the brooch she wore. The brooch had been destroyed on her way to the manor. He was a subordinate of the Typica family, or Yuri's subordinate. But Yuri's subordinate? Shouldn't he just be a painter who wandered the streets and failed to achieve his goals? His identity should have been thoroughly investigated long ago. Was there a mistake somewhere? The door of the room was suddenly opened at this time. Anna turned around vigilantly, looking at Yuri, who grasped the door with both hands when the door was opened. It was really Yuri. "You guys wait outside." Yuri turned back and ordered. Anna clearly saw a few more men with serious looks outside the door. They nodded and didn't say anything. However, when their eyes swept over her body, there was no hint of kindness in them. Yuri closed the door. He stuck to the door of the room, didn't come up for a while, didn't say anything, but just looked at Anna quietly, which made her more confused about what he wanted to do. "Did you have a good rest last night?" Yuri suddenly smiled and said, "This room should be the best one apart from mine." Anna tried to keep calm. "I think Mr. Yuri wouldn't feel too good if you were in my place." "You call me Mr. Yuri?" Yuri shook his head. He seemed to think of something, and finally walked towards the corner of the room, the cloakroom. He opened one of the wardrobes, selecting the clothes inside while saying casually, "But I didn't change my place, did I? I slept very well last night with two beautiful girls hugging me. Well, I think last night must be the best sleep I've had recently." "Really? Congratulations," Anna said to Yuri. The distance between the two of them was the distance between the window and the wardrobe. It was the furthest distance that could be found in this room. Anna put her hands behind her back and slowly pulled out a toothbrush from her sleeve. The handle of the toothbrush was broken, and the broken end was sharpened to a very sharp point. This was probably the most meaningful thing Anna had done since she woke up. It also gave her a cheap sense of security. Finally, Yuri chose a set of clothes from the wardrobe. He held it in front of him and looked at Anna with a smile. "Do you like this dress?" Anna frowned. "It seems that you want me to wear it. You're still as smart as before." Yuri looked at him approvingly. He put the clothes on the bed, but did not say anything else. He walked straight to the door. "Someone will bring you out later. I hope you'll have changed by then. Oh right, don't do anything unnecessary. To be honest, I really don't want to see you holding a weapon," he said, pointing to the corner of the room and then to his eyes. This made Anna think of Efim subconsciously. He was also a person who liked to hide in the dark and peep at everything. Anna took a deep breath. At the moment when Yuri left, she stretched out her hand and pressed the windowsill. Her face was a little ugly, looking at the clothes on the bed. Now this feeling was really terrible. But what was worse was that she couldn't figure out what Yuri wanted to do. Time to eat. A man came in with a plate of food. This was the basement of the manor. Or it was more appropriate to call it a dungeon. Yelgo thought. This was probably not an experience that he should be proud of. As the national police, he and Victor were currently trapped in this place by this group of thugs. But what was worse was that the man who came in with the food was not coming towards them. He was just delivering food to the other guard who had been watching over them all this time. Yelgo, who had not eaten anything since last night, even without drinking water, was so hungry. The cloth tied around his mouth made it impossible for him to have a good talk with Victor, even though Victor was right next to him. But both of them were tied to the wall. "Don't we kill these two guys?" The man who brought the food sat down casually and asked his companion. His companion shrugged. "Boss said to keep them alive. But Mr. Butler also said that if they tried to escape." He showed a grim smile, using the dagger in his hand to slowly cut his neck. It seemed that if this happened, it would be the most expected thing. It was simply the worst thing. Yelgo narrowed his eyes. He felt that he was still immature, and the fear almost made his mind explode. Perhaps he should have learned from Mr. Victor, who was calmer than he was. Yelgo subconsciously looked at Victor. He found that Victor lowered his head. He fell asleep. "Damn. I'm so hungry." But this young Agent Yelgo didn't know that his experience was seen by two different eyes. The owners of these two eyes quickly left through the small window that could peep into the cellar, because this manor was not a place to stay for a long time. One of the owners of the two eyes even said with concern, "Vera, are you really going to steal the painting from here?" "Steal? No." The other owner shook his head and said indifferently, "If we steal it, we can't see what the owner of this manor is going to do." "That's right, wait for me, wait." Vicar had to cover his mouth, for fear of making a louder sound. He hurriedly followed the figure who always walked in front. "Boss, Miss Anna is here." "Got it, you can go out first." Yuri nodded and ordered, "Yes, boss." All of a sudden, only Yuri and Anna were left in the spacious room. Yuri glanced at Anna, who was wearing the new dress, and smiled. "This dress really suits you." Different from Yuri, Anna was looking at every part of this room. She finally looked at the front of Yuri. There were easels, brushes, and some painting tools. There were a lot of things on the paper, so Anna recognized what Yuri was drawing at a glance. She frowned and said subconsciously, "No wonder you also said that you want to auction the Nameless Maiden. You're going to draw another one?" Yuri picked up the brush and didn't look at Anna. He just concentrated on mixing the paints and said indifferently, "Come and accompany me. You can always give me inspiration and let me know where to start the painting. I need to hurry up. After all, I have to do a special year treatment." Anna said in astonishment, "You captured me just to make me accompany you in drawing?" Yuri looked at Anna, but she couldn't tell what kind of feelings he had. Anna felt that she was looking at the man who used to have the most intimate relationship with her through eyes. She suddenly felt that it was so vague. Yuri put his finger on his lips and made a shushing gesture. "Don't talk. Just stay with me quietly. No matter how much money we get from the auction, it will all belong to you." Anna opened her mouth slightly. She felt that she had heard the most incredible words in her life. She pursed her lips, thinking about the truth of Yuri's words, and slowly walked to the easel and sat down. Yuri suddenly closed his eyes, with the brush in his left hand and the palette in his right hand. It was just a habit before he started to paint. Anna knew this. When Yuri opened his eyes and started to paint, Anna suddenly had a feeling, even if she was sitting here, Yuri didn't see her in his eyes. She didn't know why, but she suddenly felt a kind of sadness that she didn't understand. It was as if she was the one who had been abandoned. In the luxurious manor, Yuri was waving his best paintbrush, forgetful of everything. In the simple residence, the club boss who just came back from his morning jog was holding a rag and wiping a destroyed painting selectively. Of course, he was wiping only the frame of the painting, where the pigment was dissolved. As for the painting itself, it would only get worse as he wiped it. This was the one that was destroyed in the hotel last night. Such a destroyed painting, no matter who saw it, seemed to have completely lost its original value. But even so, it should still have its historical value and should not be lost because of this. But it was not real, so it was abandoned. Just last night, outside the wall of the hotel parking lot, it was ruthlessly destroyed by its original owner and abandoned by its subsequent owner. Then, it was picked up by the club boss like picking up garbage. Sure enough, he's not a professional painter for 30 years. It's impossible to restore it. Luochio looked at the messy place and then looked at the rag in his hand. He shook his head in self-mockery and stretched himself. So, he gave up this stupid method, and then gently touched the destroyed painting with his palm. The pigment mixed with alcohol began to separate slowly, moving little by little, as if returning to its original place. When a little bit of alcohol that didn't belong to the painting was separated from the canvas and finally fell into a glass placed in the narration, the abandoned painting returned to its original appearance. Luochio looked at it and nodded with satisfaction. Chapter 282. Still no news of Anna? Sorry, boss. In the end, we only found this thing on the side of Fifth Avenue. The man took out a broken brooch. Inside the building, Ephraim was looking at his man. He had a good demeanor, especially when he accompanied those politicians to eat. But in his own place, he didn't think it was necessary to maintain such a demeanor. Thus, he snorted coldly and splashed the unfinished wine on his subordinate's face. He snorted coldly and said, "Humph, trash." The man wiped his face to make sure he was not angry, then slowly said, "Boss, last night the guy called himself Yuri from the Typica family. So many guests have heard it. Don't you think we should contact this family and ask them what happened?" Efim continued to snort. "Contact them? This auction is held in the name of F&C. If you ask me to contact them, are you telling them that I'm the one who stole the painting?" "Boss, I mean, we can continue to contact the Typica family in the name of Freedom and Clown." "Idiot! Who is this Typica family? Do you think they will pay attention to a little thief?" Efim angrily walked back and forth in front of the sofa. Suddenly, the elevator behind opened, and a man came in. "Boss, there's a letter for you, but there's no name on it." "Who sent it?" Efim frowned. "Just a kid, he shouldn't know anything." The man quickly said, "But it also said that you will need the things inside." "We've checked it, there's nothing dangerous inside." Efim narrowed his eyes, but didn't take over the envelope, but said indifferently, "Open it and see what's inside." The man had to open the envelope sealed with wax directly. "This is an invitation." He was stunned, then raised his head, looking at Efim, and slowly said, "It's an invitation to you to attend the auction." Efim was shocked. He directly grabbed the invitation from his man's hand, glanced at it quickly, and then frowned. He couldn't help recalling the scenes he saw through the lens hidden by Anna's brooch last night. The last scene was too vague for him to see clearly, but he could clearly hear every word that the guy called Yuri said. He would auction the real, the nameless maiden. Efim didn't think that he also had this painting. What he thought was that this guy had already announced the auction in front of all the guests, so there was no need to send another invitation. Furthermore, this was an invitation that had been sent to this place. "You go out first," Efim indifferently ordered. Until the two men left, he couldn't help walking up the spiral staircase to the upper floor. He pressed a button, one of the bookcases here opened automatically. There was a hidden door. Efim entered the password to open the door. Here was his collection room. When he saw the real, the nameless maiden, was still here, he was slightly relieved. However, the invitation letter in his hand. He had to think in the worst direction. Did the Typica family know something? Yuri? Efim muttered to himself. He couldn't regard a down-and-out tramp and the heir of the crazy family as the same person. The same name might be a coincidence. Anna said that when she killed Yuri at the platform, she found that his so-called evidence was just a lie used to cheat. Is Anna lying to me, and Yuri didn't die at all? Efim frowned. He suddenly grabbed the phone, dialed one of the numbers, and put on a smiling face. "Black, old man, how are you recently?" "Oh, is that Efim? Not good, I'm so annoyed recently. You know, the scandal of the collusion between politicians and gangs in VK was exposed last week. My superiors bombarded me almost every day. Recently, a famous painting was stolen." The voice of the person on the other end of the phone became softer. "Our president has also spoken. Old friend, if we still can't find the culprits for these two cases, I might even become the scapegoat and retire early." Efim sighed. "Yes, a scandal, a stolen painting, and a shooting in the subway station. I really feel sorry for you." "Wait, old man, what did you say? What shooting in the subway station? Why didn't I hear about it? When did it happen? Where?" Efim gave a start. But soon he laughed and said that he was wrong. Yuri didn't die as expected. Anna lied to me. But he also squinted his eyes, calculating something secretly. On the day of the second auction. Although it was called an auction, this auction was even more informal, in such a private place. It could even be said that it was someone else's territory. An auction held in such a place was not safe at all. It could even be said that the owner of this place, The air of the Typica family had no sincerity at all. However, when one of the big shots brought his men here with the intention of giving it a try, he was surprised to see that there were already quite a few people gathered here. It was still the same masquerade party that night, but the taste was completely different. Almost all the guests today didn't bring women, but more people came to protect them, and most of them were murderous guys. Although they were also secretive, people who were familiar with each other could probably guess who the other person was, right? The collectors stood outside the manor one by one. Soon after, the iron gate of the manor opened, and the steward of the manor walked out gracefully. He glanced at his pocket watch, smiling slightly. "It's not time yet, but I'm very glad that you gentlemen can be so punctual. Although there are not as many people as that night. Everyone, please follow me in. Mr. Yuri has been waiting for you inside for a long time." "Wait a minute. I'm going in with my men," the thin man said gloomily at this time. Edgar smiled slightly. "Of course, Mr. Yuri is very democratic and doesn't intend to embarrass you. You can go ahead, but I hope you can restrain your men. If something happens to them when they wander inside, it's not within the scope of our compensation." Edgar watched as the big shots led their subordinates into the manor one by one. They were like statues. Until the last car entered the manor, he was still waiting, because it was not time yet. Abiding by the rule of time was one of the things that this old man abided by. The last 10 minutes. A delicate carriage slowly entered the entrance of the manor. Yes, it was a carriage. The man with a clown mask got off first, and then intimately reached out to lead his female companion out of the carriage. The two slowly walked to Edgar. Chapter 283. It's not too late. Both of you are Mr. Yuri's distinguished guests. Edgar smiled. "He told me that I'd better wait for you here before the auction starts." "Thank you." Lucio nodded. "Then let's go in." Edgar also nodded and said, "The carriage that this gentleman drove today is very suitable for our manor." "Really?" Lucio said with a smile. "It's chosen by my female companion. I'm just a layman about this kind of thing. It looks good, but I don't know much about it." Edgar opened his mouth in surprise. He glanced at the female companion beside this gentleman, and then looked at the time again. Then he smiled. "It's almost time. There should be no guests coming. Please come with me." Although he said so, at this time, a black Bentley Mulsanne without a license plate slowly drove in and finally stopped. Edgar said apologetically, "So there are guests. Would you please wait for a moment?" "It doesn't matter." Boss Luo, who didn't lack patience, said slowly. At this time, a man got off the car. He had a huge body and wore a black bat eye patch. In addition, he had fake steps, red with a brandy nose. This man tidied up his clothes. Seeing Edgar coming over, he said neither slowly nor hurriedly, "Has the auction started?" "Not yet, sir," Edgar said politely. This man said indifferently, "Then take me in. I don't like to stand under the sun." While saying, this huge man glanced at the carriage that stopped next to him, revealing a surprised look. He shook his head and sneered. "Does this Typica family really invite all kinds of strange people? Retro?" "These two are Mr. Yuri's distinguished guests." Edgar smiled and said, "Since this gentleman is already impatient, why don't you follow me in as well?" This sentence was very skillful. At least this huge man felt a burst of awkwardness at this moment. It sounded like there was no problem, but thinking about it carefully, it actually meant, "I'm here to guide them. Since you happen to be here, please come with me," or something like that. "Humph." The huge man snorted and said indifferently, "I hope these horses don't run around." Lucio didn't say anything when he saw his master getting into the car. He quietly got into the carriage with Yu Yi. They were indeed here to watch the auction. But the club owner never forgot that he had brought Miss Maid here as a tourist. "Actually, I wanted to ride this kind of carriage when I was in the ancient castle in the Sea of Flowers in Romania. After I saw the carriage owned by the family that sealed the Impaler Duke, I suddenly wanted to give it a try." Master, do you want to try riding a carriage? Therefore, Miss Maid remembered the words before renting the car. After entering the carriage, the coachman pulled the reins, and the carriage slowly drove into the manor. Luocio suddenly looked at Yu Yi and said, "How do you feel about that big fatty?" Yu Yi said softly, "He should be very uneasy or nervous, but I feel that he didn't realize it himself. Well, he has a strong sense of defense against the surrounding environment. He should be used to staying in a safe place for a long time. Once he enters a strange environment, he will be very uncomfortable. I think he should have a reason to go out." While saying this, Miss Maid suddenly took off the gauze hollow gloves on her hands, and a little black light appeared on her glittering fingertips. It was the size of a mosquito, and flew out from the window of the carriage. Soon after, a loud explosion was heard from the back of the carriage. The black Bentley had a flat tire. Yu Yi was actually very stingy? Luocio smiled. Just play a trick on him. This fat man is the target of our guest. We shouldn't deprive our guest's right to enjoy himself. Miss Maid obediently put on her gloves slowly. In the end, the man who came in the Bentley had to take the car inside the manor. But what made him curious was that he seemed to be taken to a place that didn't seem to be used for auction. Of course, he didn't think he would be in danger here, because this manor didn't restrict him from bringing his subordinate. However, in such an empty room with only him and a few of his subordinates, as time passed, the atmosphere gradually made him impatient. "What's that sound?" "Boss, it seems to be a video phone." A subordinate walked to the wall of the room and turned on the TV hanging on the wall. A chair appeared on the screen, and a man was sitting on it, but his back was facing. "Are you Yuri of the Typica family?" the huge man said in a low voice. "Hello, Mr. Ephraim." His words revealed the truth. He then said, "Can you ask your subordinates to go outside first? I want to talk to you alone. Of course, if you don't mind letting your subordinates hear something you don't want others to know, I won't mind. You guys go out first." Ephraim frowned, ignoring his subordinates' advice. Since the other party sent him the invitation, it indicated one thing: the owner of this manor must have something to say to him. So, he was at least safe before that. He didn't think it would be safer to stay in his iron bucket-like building all the time. Some unknown threat factors were surrounding him. Therefore, he had no choice but to take the risk. "You've done so much just to lure me here, right?" Ephraim took a deep breath. He was in a bad mood now, as if he was walking step by step in the hole dug by the other party. Even the tire of his car just now was punctured. What bad luck. Mr. Ephraim is really a smart person. So, I'll say it directly. I hope Mr. Ephraim can buy the painting in the auction later. What? Ephraim gave a start, subconsciously repeating, "You want me to buy the nameless maiden?" "No, no, no. To be exact, you need to buy this fake, the nameless maiden. No matter how much money you need, you must buy it and pay it off on the spot. Oh, of course, other guests probably won't know this painting is fake except you. Or, even if they have such doubts, they may not be able to prove it." Ephraim couldn't help sneering. "Are you kidding me?" "How come?" "Because I think Mr. Ephraim must be willing to do so. After all, you don't want the whole world to know that you asked someone to pretend to be the F&C to transport the real painting from the gallery, right?" "What evidence do you have?" Ephraim said disdainfully. "Evidence?" The chair finally turned slowly. Ephraim finally saw the real face of the man sitting in the chair and heard him say with a smile, "I'm the evidence. Yuri. Painter Yuri." Ephraim's heart suddenly began to beat violently. "It's you!" Ephraim couldn't believe it and even lost his voice. In the video, Yuri said with a playful look, "Mr. Ephraim, you're the most careful person I've ever met. For example, even Anna, the woman you think is very useful, you also have to check her every time before you see her, right? But, who asked you to sleep with this woman? You shouldn't have let her go into your fortress. That bitch, sure enough, she betrayed me." Ephraim snorted. He even directly took off the bat mask on his face, gnashing his teeth and angrily pointing at Yuri on the screen. "Did you two conspire to deal with me from the beginning? Remember, no matter what, you have to buy the painting." Yuri said indifferently, "That vagabond Yuri is just an ant to you, you can trample him to death at any time. But I'm not now. If you don't buy it, I can trample you to death." The screen turned black instantly. FM angrily swept all the things on the tea table to the ground. "Boss, what's going on?" Hearing the sound, the subordinate hurriedly pushed the door and walked in, only to see FM's terrifying eyes. Chapter 284. A room for rest couldn't accommodate all the guests. Of course, these guests didn't seem to be willing to share a room with too many others. Fortunately, this manor was spacious enough. It was definitely not a problem to prepare a room for each of these guests. "Do you really want to do this?" Vickers stretched out his hand, trying to pull Vera back, although he knew that the chance of success was almost zero. This was a woman who was born to take risks. Using a phrase he learned from an Eastern country's network when he was surfing the internet, she liked to seek death. Vera opened the door directly as if she didn't hear it. Vickers' throat was raised, and he was very nervous. "What's the matter?" A man outside the door said indifferently, "Miss, the auction hasn't started yet. If you need anything, you can tell me directly." Vera smiled slightly. She approached the gatekeeper, hooking her fingers on her collar and gently pulling it down. "I seem to have been bitten by something here. Are there any strange insects in your manor? Can you help me take a look?" "Miss, we don't have such things in our manor." The man looked straight ahead. "I think if you really have such needs, your companion in the room should be able to help you." Vera suddenly praised, "You're really a good man, I'm beginning to like you." "Well, it's all right." After that, Vera shrugged and turned back to the room. When the door was closed, the gatekeeper turned around indifferently, looking at the corridor outside the room. But in an instant, he heard a slight cracking sound. But before he reacted, he felt that his neck seemed to be pierced by something. Just in the blink of an eye, he felt a burst of dizziness. Before he could even say a word, he had already blacked out and fell to the ground directly. Only then did the door fully open again. Vera quickly looked around, and then directly dragged him into the room. She clicked her tongue and said, "A good man has to suffer losses. You don't take advantage of me, how can you blame me? The main reason is, you don't have breasts at all." Vicar looked at the ceiling and didn't speak his mind. "Don't be stunned, come here and change into this man's clothes." Vera raised her head at this moment, looking at the absent-minded vicar, and said. Soon after, Vicar, who had changed into a man's clothes, stealthily pushed the door open, but was directly pushed by Vera from behind, stumbling out. At the same time, Vera, who had changed into a full set of close-fitting leather clothes, patted Vicar's shoulder. "If the auction starts later, find a way to delay the time by yourself." Vicar immediately said with a crying face, "Dear Miss Vera, do you think that the guards in this manor can't recognize me as an outsider when they see each other every day? That's your business." Vera pinched Vicar's cheeks with her hands and shook her head slightly. "Vera, why do I pay you so much salary? Isn't it better to have a few girlfriends than to have a guy like you who likes men's butts? You're discriminating. I want a raise." "Be careful," Vera said softly. Then, she took a deep breath and put on a clown mask. She opened the window of the corridor and jumped out instantly. Clown? In his room, Yuri frowned, looking at the scene in a corridor of the manor, and then looked at the guy sitting on the opposite sofa with a strange expression. He was also wearing a clown mask. Yuri didn't know the reason, but he found one thing during the period when he temporarily replaced the owner of this manor. There was a screen in the original owner's room, which could directly see every place in the manor. Yuri didn't even know how many hidden cameras were installed in this manor. The only thing he felt was that the original owner of this manor was the real heir of the Typica family, or a voyeur. "Oh, this person, is she a real FNC? Yuri frowned. "So it's a woman? How did she come here?" FNC was inexplicably framed, and became the thief of the world-famous painting. Isn't it normal that they wouldn't act as if nothing had happened? Luo Qiu said indifferently. Yuri ground his teeth. He suddenly narrowed his eyes and stared at the man in front of him who gave him everything and took everything away from him. He said darkly, "I've prepared a good show for you to watch. I don't want anyone to ruin it." "Do you want to deal with her?" Boss Luo asked suddenly. "Is there a problem?" Yuri said indifferently. Luoqiu smiled. "No problem, but how about leaving it to me? I'll try not to let her ruin the things you've prepared." "Is the mysterious boss of the club interested in Miss Clown?" Yuri asked indifferently. Miss Maid suddenly said indifferently, "Mr. Yuri, do you think we can only serve you? Don't forget, we've already given you what you want." Her eyes turned cold and she said slowly, "And now I'm afraid we're your creditors. You can do whatever you want." Yuri shook his head. He instinctively didn't dare to look at them, so he stood up and said hurriedly, "I'm going to prepare. Please help yourselves. How's the situation on your side?" Vera, who had been sneaking in the manor, lowered her head and pulled up a small microphone clipped to her clothes. "Fortunately, no one comes here for the time being. How's the situation on your side?" "No problem, I've already memorized the route here last time." Vera said briskly, "Keep in touch." She turned off the communication, and agilely climbed to the top of the arch of the corridor, avoiding a manor maid who was passing by with something in her hands. This was a very good experience. Every time she faced such an environment and walked alone in a dangerous place, the nervousness brought by the heartbeat and the sense of crisis, as well as the excitement caused by the adrenaline stimulation, made her feel fascinated and almost unable to extricate herself. If someone had to become a thief because of his addiction to theft, then she probably had the same reason. But Vera didn't continue to turn over herself here. Every cell in her body seemed to be urging her to act as soon as possible. The stuffy feeling in the headgear made her feel as if she was sweating profusely at the onset of a climax. It was wonderful. Based on her memory, she quickly walked around the manor. She walked and then stopped. She had to stop because she felt that her route seemed to be wrong. The scene in front of her seemed to be different from her memory. She shouldn't have come to this place. What exactly went wrong? Vera couldn't help but carefully recall the route she had just taken, but no matter how hard she tried, it seemed that she couldn't find the wrong place. This made her feel that something was wrong all of a sudden. Vera subconsciously let her body stick to the wall. She didn't choose to act immediately, but carefully looked around. This was the outer corridor of the second floor of the manor close to the ground. The circular design allowed people to see the central courtyard from the corridor, but there was no one walking around the corridor. Suddenly, a feeling of falling backward appeared, which made Vera's body sink into the wall. Did she sink into the wall? At the moment when she was about to fall, she supported herself with both hands on the ground and then exerted force to straighten her body. But she found that she didn't fall into the wall, but just at the moment when the door opened. Wait, she just leaned against the door, not the wall? Clap, clap, clap. But soon she heard a few simple claps and a voice saying, "You're very good." Vera abruptly turned around. She knelt on the ground with one knee, one hand on the floor, and the other hand raised. This was the posture after falling down to straighten her body. "Well, this is also very handsome. It's you." But she couldn't help but let out a low voice almost instinctively. This was the strange person she met in the last auction. Chapter 285. Vera started to look around the room carefully. Because it was daytime, the lighting was good and she could even see every detail of the room. But at this time, she heard the voice of the mysterious guy in front of her. "Miss Vera, the lawn is behind the window on the left, and the road is behind. Now there is no one, so it should be the best time to leave the manor." "I don't know what you are talking about." "Vera? Who is Vera?" The voice from the clown mask was calm and steady, because it was made by the voice changer in the mask. Just like that night. Today, this mysterious fellow had directly seen through her identity. Therefore, she didn't let her body incline to the left for convenience, but slightly to the right. The place where the dogs are kept is on the right side of the manor.
It seems that Miss Vera thinks I am lying to you?
The club boss shook his head. I don't need to lie to you. That's funny. Will anyone believe the words of an unknown person? That's right. Luocio nodded. For Miss Vera, we don't trust each other at present. How about this? I don't want to have any accidents in this auction, so I want to ask Miss Vera to leave here, or go back to your original place and participate in the activity as a guest. Since you said that we don't trust each other, Vera sneered. She walked casually in the room, to the right side, and said, Why do I need to satisfy your wish? Besides, why do you want to ensure that this auction will go on normally? What is the relationship between you and the owner of this manor? What exactly do you want to do? Sorry, I can't tell you about this, Luocio said indifferently. Miss Vera, just think of it as some after-sales service. So, I hope Miss Vera won't bring me trouble. Really? But for me, ever since I was young, I've always given people the impression that I'm trouble. So, I'm sorry. Vera's tones suddenly sped up, and her body began to sprint toward the window on the right. Her legs kicked hard, and then her body rushed to the window. Her hands quickly pushed the window open, and then she turned over and jumped out. Her posture was as smooth as floating clouds and flowing water, like a diver jumping off a high platform. Luocio shook his head, looking at the servant girl, and asked curiously, I was just about to ask her to run to the right. Do you think she will run to the left? Yu smiled slightly. I think this lady is not in the mood to think about this kind of thing. Luocio walked to the window, looking down, and whispered, I think so. Damn it, bastard, damn it! Vera had no choice but to repeat the malicious abuse in her heart over and over again. How could this be? She had clearly chosen the right side and landed perfectly. Both of these actions should have allowed her to leave easily. But why was it like this? Why was this place really a place where wolfhounds were kept? And it wasn't just one, but 8 huge wolfhounds. Front and back, left and right, she was obviously surrounded by these well-trained big guys. The inside of the hood, which was already stuffy, began to become even more moist. Facing 8 dogs, Vera couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Maybe dealing with these dogs at the same time was not a suicidal act, but it would definitely expose her behavior. She had no choice but to raise her head and look at the window on the second floor that she had pushed open. She looked at the hateful guy who looked like he was watching a show and shrugged. I think we should fix the relationship of mistrust between the two sides. Let's go back, Luocio said softly. The 8 ferocious wolf dogs immediately turned around and ran away like domestic cats without barking. Vera subconsciously asked, Are you a circus's beast tamer? Boss Luo suddenly said, The auction is about to start. If Miss Vera doesn't want to leave, can you join me? I don't seem to have a choice. Vera shrugged. She directly untied the hood on her face, fanning the wind, and said, How do you know my identity? I think, if I don't know this, Luocio said softly, we are not qualified to say that we can serve Miss Vera. Let's go. I think Miss Vera needs to change back to your original clothes before joining the auction. At the same time, the window on the second floor suddenly opened. At the moment when the window opened, Vera saw Vicar. Her assistant was surprised. You're back? So fast? Looking at Vicar's surprised expression, Vera subconsciously looked up. The window had been closed. What happened? The route she memorized a day ago seemed to be completely messed up. After going around in circles, she actually returned to the original starting point? Is there anything upstairs? Vicar poked his head out and looked upstairs at the same time. Vera took a deep breath and said, Go back to the room and change your clothes. Let's go to the auction. So, what's the meaning of going out? Vicar's face was full of confusion. But Vera had quickly climbed through the window, then walked into the room and quickly changed her original clothes. Vera pulled the zipper at the back of her skirt while looking at herself in the mirror. The route she took in the manor when she left the room appeared in her mind again. She believed that she had a good memory. Even though the manor was huge, she still had the confidence to reconstruct the composition in her mind. Suddenly, Vera pressed her hands on the basin, and her eyes approached the mirror. Her eyes suddenly changed, turning into blue, cone-shaped pupils. I didn't go wrong, but why is there such a huge difference between the real scene and the composition? It was too mysterious, as if it was an unsolvable puzzle. God, as a magician, Vera swore that she must unravel the mystery. Vera's body suddenly seemed to be extremely tired, almost lying on the basin. She took a deep breath and washed her face. She wanted to calm down. She knew that she overused her brain power, so she had to stop this intense brain power. But at this time, there was an inexplicable idea in her mind. That guy is more like a magician than me. It was similar to a tea party, in this palace-like room. Sorry to keep you waiting for a long time. Yuri had exposed his appearance in the hotel last time, but at the beginning of today, he also wore a half-mask to cover his face. But no one paid attention to his action. This was because as Yuri walked in, two men behind him were moving an object that was covered with a white cloth. Today's theme, what was this thing? It was obvious. I believe that everyone must be wondering why I have a copy of The Nameless Maiden in my hand. Yuri glanced at the people present. He saw the boss of the club sitting quietly in the corner. But there were two more people beside Luaccio. But he didn't care about these. The time he had didn't allow him to think about these things. At the moment when the white cloth was lifted, the scene almost made the same low exclamation. Unbelievable! An old man gathered in front of this painting at this time. He held a small magnifying glass in his hand, and now he was immersed in observing. In fact, if it wasn't for the fact that someone was guarding this image, he would have reached out to touch its texture. Everything can be faked, but this technique can't fool people. This is indeed Ivan Nikolaevich. It's true that this is Ivan Nikolaevich's authentic work. I've been chasing his works for almost half a world. I can't be wrong. This is the real, the Nameless Maiden? Then the one in the hotel last time. Wasn't it obtained by FNC? Why did it appear in Tipica's house? Is FNC a member of Tipica's family? But who exactly was the person in the hotel that night? I'm more concerned about the price of this painting. Don't talk nonsense, we're here for this painting today. As long as it's real, I'm willing to pay any price. Edgar found the atmosphere was almost there, so he stood up and said slowly, You know, this painting is priceless. So there's no final conclusion about its value. So we don't intend to set a price for it. The auction will officially start after the first guest bids. Mr. Butler smiled and said, Of course, the one who can suppress everyone will become the new owner of this heirloom treasure. So, everyone, what are you waiting for? I'll bid 1 million. In an instant, a slightly plump guest sitting near the center of the table called out the price. However, when he saw that almost everyone was looking at him, he could only add, Euros, this gentleman bid 1 million euros. Edgar nodded and said indifferently, First time. No need to bother. Suddenly, in another corner, a huge man stood up and said in a low voice, 250 million euros. Whoever wants a painting with a higher price can take it. Chapter 286. 250 million. Crazy. How can you bid like this? Don't you know, even so far, the highest price in the world is Picasso's painting, which can reach more than 100 million. And it's only in US dollars. This was 2 times higher than the most expensive auction in the world. Some people couldn't accept this price at all. And a few people kept silent, as if they were hesitating. When Edgar was about to shout for the 3rd time, suddenly someone gritted his teeth and said firmly, 251 million euros. 260 million euros. FM said slowly with an unimaginably calm tone, which almost crossed his bottom line. Why did he need to take out such a huge fortune? He should have been the one who got the money. But now, he had to pay the bill. More importantly, he clearly knew that the painting was fake. And what was worse, the real one had already been in his hands. You win. I hope you're really going to collect it. You can't sell it at this price. Don't forget that this thing can't be exposed to the white light. The man snorted. But Ephraim, who only wanted to end the battle quickly, didn't want to argue with him, but stood up. Edgar had finished the last sentence. 260 million euros, the third time, sold. Hearing the word sold, Ephraim felt heartache, but he also felt relieved unexpectedly. Sir, our rule here is to pay first and then take the goods. Edgar said slowly. Of course, please rest assured. After all, in front of so many guests, our Typica family won't do something that will damage our reputation. I hope so. Ephraim snorted. Don't write a check, just transfer the money by electronic bank. Saying this, he took out a network key from his inner pocket. Buying a painting that he knew was fake for 260 million euros, he felt that he must be crazy. The money has been transferred. Edgar walked to Yuri at this time and whispered to him. Yuri nodded at this time, directly lifting the painting and walking to Ephraim, handing it to him. Take it, if you drop it, there won't be a second one. You don't need to remind me. Ephraim snorted. But at this time, Yuri suddenly stretched out his hand, and quickly took off the bat mask on Ephraim's face. What are you doing? Ephraim was shocked, quickly stepping back. Yuri just squinted his eyes and said calmly, Nothing, I just want to let all guests know who got this heirloom treasure, and congratulate him. Congratulation. Yuri stretched out his hand. Ephraim's face suddenly turned ugly, because he clearly heard some voices of discussion, the guests' voices. Isn't this Ephraim? The nouveau riche from the mining area. Obviously, some of the guests had recognized him. Ephraim knew that before today, the whole underground world of Moscow would know that the nameless maiden was in his hands. But he didn't intend to make trouble here. He grabbed Yuri's palm expressionlessly, but he was unusually forceful. He lowered his voice like a cornered beast. I've already bought the painting. What other tricks do you want to play? Tricks? Yuri shook his head and laughed. There's no trick, I just want Mr. Ephraim to get this painting, not the F and C that can be casually impersonated. You've got guts. Ephraim put on a fake smile, and then lifted the painting, turning to look at his subordinates, gritting his teeth. Let's go! Ephraim directly pushed open the door of the room with his men. Although the rest of the guests felt a weird atmosphere, few people were willing to intervene if it was a problem between Ephraim, the nouveau riche of the Las Padskaya mining area, and the Typica family, the lunatics who smuggled arms. Everyone, I've asked people to prepare some delicious food and wine. Although the painting has been bought, but... Yuri smiled and said, let's finish the ball a few days ago. But in fact, not many people intended to stay. Those who stayed might just want to get to know the Typica family. After all, it was better to have one more friend than one more stranger. Society, be it in the open or in the dark, was all about connections. 260 million euros, tut-tut. Vera, who had watched the whole process of the auction, now tidied up her skirt and said calmly, such a sky-high price, no wonder you don't want to let anything happen to this auction. If she had known that this price would be reached, even if it was her, she wouldn't have let any accidents happen at the auction. She didn't have a particularly strong desire for money, but she also admitted that money was a good thing, and no one would dislike having too little of it. Those who said that money was no longer money once it reached a certain level, but was just a simple number, and that it was enough as long as it was enough to eat and wear. People who said such words were just fooling the common people. Let these people go to the slums and suffer some hardships? From luxury to simplicity, they would swallow all their words. Miss Vera, are you going to stay for the following banquet? Boss Luo didn't answer, and even skipped such a topic. No, I don't like to stay with a guy who pretends to be mysterious. Vera said indifferently, now I didn't destroy your auction, so I'll leave. That was what she said, and what she did, then she directly pulled Vicar away. But until she felt that she had completely left this person's line of sight, Vera had a feeling of fear, as if the person behind her was a python that could devour people. Unconsciously, she was already wet. Finally, after getting into the car, Vera suddenly clutched her chest and gasped for air as if she was having an asthma attack. Vera, you! Vicar suddenly became anxious, and quickly took out a small bottle from the storage box of the co-pilot seat, and poured out some small pills. Don't eat too much. Vera pushed Vicar's hand away, trying to endure the uncomfortable things in her body. I just used my brain today. I'll be fine after a rest. Hurry up before it gets dark. The moon will be very round tonight. In the basement of the manor, Victor and Yelgo were trapped in the basement. Yelgo was thinking hard about how to get out of this bad environment. At this time, the door of the basement was opened again. But this time, the people who opened the door didn't send food, and there was more than one. They walked to Victor's side, untied him, and held him down at the same time. Victor frowned and said in a low voice, "Where are you going to take me? And, do you know what you are doing? You are openly challenging the police of Moscow." But they were like mutes, and didn't intend to respond to Victor. They just violently took him away from this place. So, Victor was taken all the way to the current owner of the manor, and was forced to sit at one end of a long table. The person sitting at the other end, who was cutting the steak on the plate, was Yuri. "Relax, Mr. Policeman." Yuri bit a small piece of beef, drank a mouthful of wine, and smiled. "I don't intend to hurt you." "Really? Restraining a policeman for more than 48 hours, you are breaking the law." Victor sneered. Although his current situation was bad, he was brought here. Here was the dining table, which meant that what would happen next might be something that could be solved through negotiation. He had to toughen himself up, so that he could have a better grasp of the next conversation. Breaking the law? Yuri shook his head. He clasped his hands and said with a pious look, "Mr. Victor, you misunderstood me. I think I will be a good citizen." "As for why?" "Naturally, it is because I will provide clues to find the nameless maiden." "What?" Victor frowned. He suddenly couldn't figure out what this guy's plan was. Yuri suddenly clapped his hands at this time. His butler Edgar, who had been standing beside him, turned away lightly, and turned on the projector in the living room. "Look, there are some interesting things here." Yuri smiled. Victor patiently watched what was being played on the projector. First, he heard an angry voice. "What? You want me to take a picture of this painting? That bitch really betrayed me." The scene suddenly changed. In a room where many people were wearing masks, it was still the man with the bat mask. His voice. 250 million euros. Whoever wants a painting with a higher price can take it. Until the last scene, when the man with the bat mask was unveiled and his true face was finally revealed, it was extremely clear. "This is Efim?" Victor couldn't help but frown. The reason why he could recognize Efim was not only because he was a rich businessman, but more importantly his identity was also a politician. "What do you want to do?" "I give these to you, and you help me to ruin Efim's reputation. At the same time, you can also find the stolen painting. It's a great contribution." Victor sneered. "You want to use my hand to help you eradicate Efim? You think I should wallow in the mire with you? I help you just to catch a bastard, and then let another bastard come out? In that case, I'm afraid, Mr. Victor, even your partner can't get out of this manor." Yuri said with a little pity. "Oh, by the way, Mr. Victor, do you have a family? Parents, wife, and children?" Bang! Victor angrily slammed his hands on the table and suddenly stood up, but was immediately pressed down by the two men behind him. He couldn't help gnashing his teeth. "You're a bastard!" Chapter 287. "Mr. Victor, don't you need our people to send you back?" You know, it's a long way from here to downtown. In front of the manor, Edgar looked at Victor and asked, "No, I'll be suffocated if I stay with you for one more minute." Victor gritted his teeth. He had been very discontented since he walked out of that room. He didn't even want to be nice to everyone in this manor, because he had to accept the condition of the manor owner. Edgar seemed to be used to this kind of scene, so he didn't show any dissatisfaction on his face. He smiled and said, "Mr. Victor, please rest assured. We'll take good care of Mr. Yelgo when you're not here." Victor didn't say anything. He just turned around silently and walked to the road leading to downtown. It seemed to be the only way to go. "Sir, Sheriff Victor has gone back." When Edgar returned to the manor, Yuri was sitting alone on the sofa in the study with his eyes closed. At this time, he slightly nodded and suddenly asked, "By the way, where are my two guests?" "Two guests?" Edgar was stunned for a moment and asked curiously, "Sir, who are the two guests you're talking about?" Yuri slowly opened his eyes and glanced at Edgar's expression. There was only doubt on the old man's face. Did he forget again? It was just like when he woke up in this manor for the first time. Those two people, the man and the woman, seemed to not exist. But in the whole manor, only Yuri himself knew that this time, he seemed to be controlled by the man and the woman. "Nothing. I may have remembered something wrong." Yuri shook his head and took a deep breath. "Go and ask Miss Anna to come here." "Yes, sir." Anna was taken to the door of the room. Edgar just made a gesture of please at this time. He didn't open the door for Anna, but just stood there. Anna frowned, seeming to want to let her go in by herself. She hesitated for a moment, then calmly pushed the door and entered. Yuri was sitting on the sofa, seemingly for some time. Did he fall asleep? Anna closed the door. Since Yuri invited her to accompany him to paint last time, they didn't have any contact during this time. Although she knew that Yuri lived in this place, Anna narrowed her eyes and subconsciously made her footsteps as light as a house cat as she slowly approached. All of a sudden, Yuri raised his head and opened his eyes as if he had just woken up from a dream. "Are they here?" "Sorry, I'm a little tired, so I took a nap." "Nothing." Anna stopped in her tracks. She turned her eyes and smiled. "I saw the guests' cars leaving the manor. It seems that your auction has been a success. Congratulations. Not only did you sell this painting, but you also disrupted Epham's previous auction, so that he didn't get anything. Next, as long as you spread the news that this painting has been sold, the real painting in Epham's hand will be even more shady and difficult to sell. I think he must have been so angry that he directly smashed the cup." "Anna." Yuri suddenly shouted this name. "What's the matter?" Anna walked along the waveguide on the floor of the room. She came to the sofa and sat opposite to Yuri. "Do you know the transaction price of this auction?" Yuri asked indifferently. "I think you will tell me?" Anna looked at Yuri with her charming eyes. Yuri looked at it appreciatively and said softly, 260 million euros. Anna almost felt that her breath had stopped for a moment. Although she had tried to assume the success of the auction and overestimated the guests' enthusiasm as much as possible, she never thought that it would be such a sky-high price. More importantly, she remembered what Yuri had said to her. All the proceeds from the auction of this painting would belong to her. "Yuri, you're really a genius." But as smart as she was, she didn't intend to continue the topic of 260 million euros. She needed to test what kind of attitude Yuri had. She hadn't been able to figure out what kind of attitude Yuri had. "You really did it. You completely imitated Ivan's painting. You're simply a living Ivan. Nikolaevich," Anna said excitedly. Yuri heaved a sigh of relief and suddenly asked, "Anna, do you still remember how we met?" "Of course, how could I forget?" Anna said in a reminiscing voice, that moving voice. "At that time, I had just walked out of the art gallery. Maybe it was God's will, I didn't take the usual road, but chose another one. I met you on that road." She looked at Yuri with blurred eyes. "At that time, you were eating bread. You sat on the ground and there was a drawing board on the stool. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew one of your papers out, and it came to me. Maybe God wants to bring your painting to my side, and also to bring you to my side. But when we were on the platform, you ruthlessly drove me away from you, forever and ever. Yuri narrowed his eyes. Anna shook her head, and there seemed to be a trace of pain on her face. She didn't intend to refute, but just looked at Yuri with complex eyes. Her eyes were like a whirlpool, as if there were thousands of words that couldn't be said in detail. Finally, she just said in a low voice, "I'm sorry. Here's 10 million. But in the next moment, Yuri took out a check from his pocket and pushed it on the table in front of Anna. He said indifferently, "You attacked me at the station and I lied to you this time. Let's call it even. 260 million, I can't give you that." Looking at the change of expression on Anna's face, Yuri shook his head, stood up and walked towards the door, saying while walking, "Where do you want to go? Just tell my steward, and the driver will send you away. Oh, by the way." At the moment when the door was opened, Yuri turned back. "You shouldn't study oil painting appraisal. I think it's more suitable for you to study acting." Anna sat there, motionless. She slowly retracted her angry gaze, took a deep breath, and said, "Is that so? I'll think about it. Then goodbye." Yuri closed the door. There were painful cries, smashing sounds, and the sound of something hanging on the wall and floor. Outside the room, Vicar was holding a glass of vodka with both hands. His body kept trembling, and the drink in the glass kept shaking, although it was not the first time for him to experience this, but every time, he would feel fear from the bottom of his heart. "Vi, Vera. Or you take some more medicine." Vicar quickly walked to the door of the room, saying loudly through the door, "Go away." The roaring sound burst in Vicar's ears, and he stepped back instinctively. But he always felt too dangerous and scared, so he held the cushion in his arms with one hand, and picked up the fruit knife on the table with the other, pointing at the room nervously. He swallowed his saliva. "Vi. Vera. For the sake of so many years, if you can't stand it and want to rush out, remember to tell me before you rush out." Roar! The inhuman roar suddenly sounded, and Vicar was so scared that he sat down on the ground. But after this sound, there seemed to be no movement in the room. Vicar swallowed his saliva, thinking that he'd better wait for a while. In the room, Vera had already collapsed on the ground. The light was not turned on, and even the curtains were closed, making the room completely dark. But at this time, the table lamp in the room suddenly lit up. The orange light shone out, showing the figure lying on the ground completely. She was Vera. She fell to the ground, her body curled up, and there was not a single piece of clothing on her. She seemed to have fainted. Round beads of sweat were hanging on the thick hair on her body, like a cat that accidentally fell into the water and got wet. And the silver, wet hair was gradually disappearing from Vera's arms, thighs, abdomen, and even her face, or it was shrinking back. As for the club boss who turned on the table lamp for this room, now he and Miss Maid carefully observed the slowly shrinking furry tail that came out from Vera's back. Yu said that this was a wolf's tail. Chapter 288. Finally, the furry tail disappeared from Vera's body. This seemed to be the final sign. Except for her hair and eyebrows, there was no extra hair on her body. Her whole body had become unusually smooth. Vera curled up on the cold floor. In fact, the floor was already wet with her sweat. Lucio looked at the room at this time. There were many crisscrossing cracks on the walls and the floor. Some of them were even as dense as a fishing net. "Is this a werewolf?" Lucio, who saw this kind of thing for the first time, was very interested. Just like the first time he met a monster, he also had a curious expression. When he was still in the manor, Lucio felt a little strange. That was when Vera went out of the window and met the wolfhounds in the manor. Although these wolfhounds did surround Vera, they didn't bark from beginning to end. Instead, they bared their teeth and tightened their bodies as if they were facing a formidable enemy. As for Vera's compromise with him later, It was not so much out of fear, but the feeling of it was better this way. As for after the auction, although she was calm, Boss Luo had seen a lot of people recently. He also saw a hint of anxiety in the eyes of this handsome magician, and a touch of whiteness on her lips. Miss Maid crossed her arms and thought for a moment. Vera? Takhtakanov. Although there are many people who use this surname in Russia, looking at the change of Miss Vera just now, I think there is only one family. Yu Yi looked at Luochio and whispered, Master, I think Miss Vera should be the princess of the Takhtakanov family, the biggest mafia in Russia. Luochio walked back and forth in the room, walking around Vera on the ground, then looked up. A werewolf family? It's a very old family. But there are very few werewolves in existence. Basically, they are scattered all over the world. Miss Vera's family is one of a kind. Yu Yi whispered, the Takhtakanov family belongs to the descendants of the ancient Turkic people. In ancient times they worshipped the wolf totem. Although she only had a history of 300 years as a maid, Luochio always felt that Yu Yi was like a living dictionary. Luochio felt that Miss Maid had a good attribute, so he was in a good mood. He nodded and said, the guy outside just now said that she needs to take some medicine, maybe she will feel better. Maybe. Can the werewolf transformation be controlled by medicine? Yu Yi thought for a moment and said, no, an adult pure-blood werewolf can control their transformation even when there is a full moon. Although their temper will become very irritable when there is a full moon, and they can easily lose control because of some small things, at least they can barely maintain their transformation. Yu Yi looked at Vera on the ground and said indifferently, but she seems to be in too much pain. I think there might be some problems in her bloodline, and the so-called medicine should be to help her suppress the transformation of the night. But I'm afraid that the medicine has a lot of side effects, so she would rather suffer a little and endure it by herself than to eat too much. But Yu Yi pondered for a moment, stretched out her finger and touched Vera's forehead lightly, then said slowly, I'm afraid she can't hold on much longer. This body is about to reach its limit, and it will probably collapse soon. Luochio nodded and then waved his hand to let Vera, who was curled up on the ground, float up and slowly land on the bed, pulling the quilt over her. Her body, which had returned to its original appearance, was covered just like that. Luochio stretched out his hand again, and the remote control of the air conditioner that was smashed by Vera when she went crazy flew into his hand. After turning on the air conditioner and setting it to automatic mode, Luochio looked at Yu Yi and smiled. Is there any place suitable for taking a walk at night? Is the riverside okay? Luochio smiled and followed her advice. Before leaving, Boss Luo gently put a black card beside Vera's pillow. As Anna once said to Yuri, Efim was smashing cups in his fortress. Many cups and glass fragments were scattered all over the ground. The door of the elevator suddenly opened. Looking at the glass fragments on the ground, his subordinate nervously walked to Demon Efim's side. Boss, Miss Anna is back. Anna? Efim turned back. With his hands on his waist, he didn't look approachable. Really, let her come up. When the elevator door opened, Anna first looked around the elevator door as usual. She found that there weren't two people to scan her as usual. But she still walked in. The glass fragments on the ground alarmed her. Looking at Efim, who stood in front of the glass curtain silently with a glass in his hand, Anna frowned. What happened? You actually came back? Efim said indifferently, You're really brave. Anna said discontentedly, I was caught by the Tipika family, and finally found a chance to escape. What do you mean? You blame me for the accident in your auction? Escape? Efim sneered. Then tell me, how did you escape? Anna said indifferently, Efim, it's not important. What's important is that I found something. That day, I didn't kill Yuri on the platform, and he even inexplicably became a member of the Tipika family. He destroyed the painting in the hotel that day, and then sold a new painting himself. Do you know how much he sold? How much? Efim rolled his eyes, asking curiously. Anna sighed, rubbing her brows. 260 million euros. How could there be such an idiot, buying a fake painting with 260 million euros? I have to admit that Yuri is indeed a genius in counterfeiting. Efim, we should think about how to recover the loss now. I know you're angry, but it's not the time to be angry. Efim nodded. I admit it. Oh, I want to show you something. Come with me. Anna was stunned, and followed Efim to the back of the screen in the room, to the front of an easel. This time, Efim lifted the white cloth on the easel by himself. The nameless maiden? Anna frowned. Why did you take out the real one? Do you have any plans? No, this is also a fake one. Efim looked at Anna, saying slowly. How could it be? Shouldn't the fake one have been destroyed in the hotel? But Anna immediately stopped talking. She seemed to have realized something. But it seemed to be too late. Because at this moment, Efim suddenly attacked, grabbing Anna's hair with one hand, pulling her body to the wall, and reaching out to strangle her neck. Looking at Anna's frightened expression, he put his face close to hers, sneering, Why is it impossible? Why is it impossible? That's because the person you're talking about who spent 260 million euros to buy the fake goods is me. Anna grasped Efim's arm painfully. Although this man was fat, he had terrifying physical strength. His huge body pressed her body against the wall, making her unable to move. Her neck had been strangled. She could only feel difficulty in breathing, and couldn't speak. Efim looked at Anna with a ferocious face, opening his mouth as if to swallow her. I don't know why Yuri became a member of the Typica family, and I don't want to know now. And I don't want to know what your plan is, so I dare to come back here. However, I can honestly tell you that you're dead meat. How dare you betray me? Moreover, he and that Yuri even stole 260 million from me. You even exposed me in front of everyone. Anna patted the wall painfully. The decreasing oxygen was begging in her body. She felt that her sight began to dim slowly, and the laryngeal bone in her neck seemed to be crushed at any time. She recalled the conversation she had with Yuri before she left the manor. He didn't tell her that the person who bought the painting was Efim. He even said to her, so, goodbye. Turned out to be this goodbye. Boss? What's the matter? Efim sat quietly and took a sip of wine, but he didn't say anything. He just pointed at the corner of the wall. There, Anna had fallen to the ground, motionless, and her body had even turned cold. Boss, I see, I'll deal with her. The subordinate nodded. Suddenly, a phone call was made. Chapter 289. What Efim was most worried about happened, and it happened on the same day. He suddenly had a feeling that he was caught in a big net woven for him. Ever since his identity had been exposed in the manor, he had felt uneasy. And at this moment, when a police car came downstairs, this feeling reached its peak in an instant. Did he say, "What's the matter?" No. The man said quickly. He just showed his ID and showed his identity, saying that he has something important to see you. But I think he's in a hurry. Efim pondered for a while, nodding. Let him wait for me downstairs. I'll come down after I change my clothes. Understood. The man nodded. He had a lot of things to do, not only to greet the sheriff downstairs, but also to clean up this room and some things that didn't belong here. Ha ha ha, sorry, I'm taking a shower. Because I'm used to going to bed after 10 o'clock. Sorry to keep you waiting. Efim, who had changed his clothes, came downstairs at this time. He looked at the sheriff in front of him. The man said that he had verified his ID, so there was no problem with his identity. Hello, Mr. Efim. I'm Victor, sorry to bother you so late at night. Victor nodded, suddenly approaching Efim. But the bodyguard beside Efim reached out to stop him, saying indifferently, Mr. Victor, take your time. Victor said calmly, Mr. Efim, can I talk to you alone? I don't think you'll refuse me. Really? Efim said indifferently. If I tell your boss that a reckless guy came to my house in the middle of the night to harass me, I don't think he'll refuse my complaint. Victor smiled, lowering his voice. I heard that Mr. Ephraim bought something extraordinary today, right? In an instant, Ephraim narrowed his eyes. After a moment of silence, he waved his hand, saying, "You go out first, I have something to talk with Mr. Victor." Seeing that the man had left, leaving only him and Victor in the room, Ephraim slowly sat down, saying calmly, "What did Sheriff Victor say just now? I didn't seem to listen carefully." Victor showed a smile at this time, coming to Ephraim again. But he took out his phone and put it on the table, in front of Ephraim. "I think Mr. Ephraim will be very interested in the content of this film." "Oh, really?" Ephraim picked up the phone casually and played it. His face turned ugly as the movie played. He didn't even finish watching the movie before he stopped watching it. He put down his phone and looked up at Victor, who was standing with his hands clasped. His fingers were slowly tapping on the armrest. For a long time, Ephraim suddenly asked, "What do you want?" Victor said slowly, "This was sent by one of my men. I guess he wants to make a contribution. After all, this film clearly points out that the stolen painting was bought by you, Mr. Ephraim. Because of what happened today, we have reason to believe that the painting is still in your hands. However, I intercepted it with me. Currently, other than me, no one else knows about it." Ephraim said indifferently, "Isn't it good if you hand it in all the way? That's a great contribution, isn't it?" Victor shrugged and said, "I don't know if Mr. Ephraim knows how much the annual salary of a regular agent, such as me, is? And with my current position, if I were to be promoted, how much annual salary would I be able to get? What about the director? How much is it?" Ephraim said calmly, "Do you know that I've known your director for a long time?" Victor smiled. "A big businessman like you, Mr. Ephraim, naturally knows a lot of people. However, because a video of a mafia boss was uploaded to VK earlier, a lot of things were involved. I think most of the people in Moscow will be separated temporarily in the future. Mr. Ephraim, do you know how many years I've been in this field? 23 years. I even received the Neva King Alexander Medal awarded by the president himself." Victor said confidently, "I believe my words have some effect, and even our boss may not be able to let me pack up and leave my current position immediately." Ephraim said indifferently, "It's good to be confident. In addition, I admire your courage to come to me alone." "Not bad, not bad, I like to cooperate with people with courage. I'll buy this film, give me a price you like." Victor said, "Mr. Ephraim, do you think it's okay to just buy this film? What do you want to say?" Victor said, "I don't believe that a newbie under me who just graduated not long ago can get his hands on this video. Mr. Ephraim, have you offended anyone recently?" Ephraim patted his palm on the armrest and stood up. "Mr. Victor, thank you for bringing me this news. But I'm a businessman, I like a straightforward way of talking." Victor said indifferently, "Our director is not clean, he may step down at any time. I think Mr. Ephraim will need a more stable and younger partner." "Is this your purpose?" Ephraim squinted. "I've received the Neva King Alexander Medal, but I can only stay in a small office. Don't you think it's a pity, Mr. Ephraim?" Victor approached Ephraim and whispered, "Someone wants to deal with Mr. Ephraim. I think Mr. Ephraim also needs more helpers, don't you?" "Why should I believe you?" Ephraim sneered. Victor shrugged. "Time will prove it to me. Our boss's situation is not good recently, maybe it won't be long. In short, I know this film will only be in my hand. However, I think the person who leaked it may do something if he doesn't hear anything from us. This is my business card. Mr. Ephraim can contact me if you need." Watching Victor take back the phone and walk towards the door, Ephraim suddenly said when he was about to open the door, "Wait. Anything else?" Ephraim took out a checkbook from his clothes, signed his name and tore off a blank check. "Write a number that you think is nice. I can't let you feel that you've come here for nothing." Victor reached out and held the check, waving his hand. "Then, I'm looking forward to your call, Mr. Ephraim." "Boss, what did that stinky policeman say?" The man who had become Victor's confidant several years ago came back, looking at Ephraim, who was meditating. Ephraim said it briefly, and the confidant frowned. "Boss, it seems that the Typica family wants to deal with you on purpose?" However, they didn't expect that they would be stuck when it came to Victor. This guy was also an ambitious person. It seems that he wants both money and power. But Ephraim suddenly said, "Do you think Victor has no problem?" The confidant thought for a while and said, "But he has no reason to come to you directly with such important evidence, which is a serious violation of the Army's record. If he feels that this is a chance to make a meteoric rise, I think he may take the risk. In my opinion, it's a pity that a person who can get the Alexander of Neva medal is still working in a small inspector's office." Ephraim was silent for a while and suddenly said, "Have the things been cleaned up? The garbage has been loaded and taken away by the garbage truck." The confidant looked at the time on his wrist and said indifferently, "It should be burned soon." Ephraim nodded and then said slowly, "Book me a ticket to Italy for the next week. I want all the time slots." At 9:05, Miss Anna entered the building. At 9:19, Victor also came to Ephraim's building. At 9:30, someone threw a big black bag onto the garbage truck. At 9:50, Victor left the building. At 11:40, Miss Anna still hasn't appeared. "Boss, I think the big bag on the garbage truck should be." Yuri waved his hand to stop the man sitting next to the driver. He just opened the window of the car, watching a garbage truck parked on the roadside from a distance. Two men in garbage collection uniforms moved a big black bag down, sprinkling gasoline on it and burning it on the spot when no one was there at night. He looked at the flame covering the whole bag, and looked at the ashes, and finally closed his eyes slowly. Finally, he said, "Drive." The black caravan left the road, and the garbage truck also drove away quietly. Then, the wind blew away the ashes. Maybe there would be no trace left tomorrow. Voices. Later, a canal was built to connect the Moscow River and the Volga River, so that it can lead to 5 different sea areas, so the river transportation has become more developed. 5? Yes, master. They are the Black Sea, the White Sea, the Caspian Sea, the Baltic Sea, and the Azov Sea. He seemed to sigh with emotion, and said gently with a smile, "It seems that I don't need the search engine any more." She heard voices. A man's voice and a woman's voice, as if they were chatting. So she opened her eyes, but there was only darkness and stuffy in front of her. She seemed to be trapped in a narrow space. She struggled for a few times, and finally found the exit to leave this narrow place. A zipper. She pulled open the zipper, broke free from the big black bag, and breathed the fresh air. By the river, the evening lights of Moscow were flickering, dotting the river like a river of stars. A man and a woman were pointing to the river bank, whispering something. She remembered that she seemed to have seen the figures of these two people. When she was suffocating, she seemed to have heard the man's voice. "Customer, do you need anything?" Chapter 290. Anna slowly walked to the man and woman on the riverbank. Only when she got close enough did she see the appearance of the man and woman clearly. A very young man and woman. When they turned around and looked at Anna, she said subconsciously, "Did you save me?" But when she finished this sentence, she immediately paused with a surprised look on her face. Anna found that her voice was like the sound of wind through the broken glass. Hoarse, broken, and some of the syllables were even directly distorted into unknown sound. She subconsciously reached out her hand to touch her throat. I. Anna tried hard to make herself complete, but it didn't seem to work. Finally, she heard the answer that made her feel unimaginable. "I think, Miss Anna, you'd better not try." The young man with an oriental face in front of her slowly said, "Although we came immediately after hearing your call. It's a pity that you were in a bad state at that time." Luochu tried to explain in words that Anna could understand. "Let's put it this way. At that time, Miss Anna's throat had been broken and she was dying. Well, we kept you in this state for the time being." Anna opened her mouth as if she still couldn't understand the meaning of this paragraph. Luaccio had to make it simpler, that is to say, when you get rid of this state, you will immediately welcome death. Anna didn't know what the so-called state was, but she clearly touched the state of her neck. The bones here had been broken. If others were to look at this place, they would think that this place was very strange. She was silent for a long time, and finally squeezed out the words with difficulty. How long? Luaccio said indifferently, of course not too long. The guest is in the protection mechanism of the transaction, so she can maintain this state. But if the time is too long, it will disappear automatically. Please don't misunderstand, we are not giving you any consideration, but we need to consume a little bit to maintain your state. I think since Miss Anna has woken up, then, half an hour, is it enough for you to consider? By the way, Miss Anna will be completely dead after half an hour, so our judgment is. I'm afraid that you can't take out any more valuable transaction fee except your own soul. Anna fell silent after hearing this. She took a few steps forward, walked past Luaccio and Yu Yi, and came to the position closest to the river. She gazed at the night view across the river bank, lost in thought. When there were only 5 minutes left, she slowly turned around and silently looked at the young man. She still didn't speak, but having experienced such a miraculous scene, she subconsciously felt that this person might be able to understand her meaning. The club's boss still followed his duty to guide the guests. Luaccio said slowly, "Is this really okay? Miss Anna, what I can tell you is that what you want to ask is not something that we Anitya Helgards can provide you. It will subtract some of the value of the transaction fee you hold. That is, it will cause a deviation in your final purchasing power. Are you sure you still feel like you need this part?" Anna nodded in silence. "I got it." Boss Luo said straightforwardly, "Mr. Yuri was saved by us. Now he can use the power of the Typica family, which is indeed from us." A trace of sadness flashed in Anna's eyes. She seemed to be able to guess the final answer, but she still had a longing look. She still chose to listen to it. "The content of the transaction between Mr. Yuri and us is," Luaccio said softly. "He hopes to gain the power of revenge. For this, he only has 1 month left to live. Now there are about 27 days left." Anna finally closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. Her instinct, even though she clearly felt that the air was blocked at her neck after entering her respiratory tract. This seemed to make her more uncomfortable. However, her tear ducts were still working well. Finally, she opened her eyes again. Her gaze was completely dim under the shroud of water vapor. In the end, she forced herself to reveal a smile that was even uglier than crying. With her hoarse, broken, and terrifying voice that sounded like that of the oldest witch, she said with a strong sense of hatred, "You shouldn't be here," Luaccio said indifferently. "This part of the cost has been recorded. Miss Anna, do you want to buy anything else?" When the last 5 minutes were exhausted, Anna said with difficulty, "Let me see to the end." "As you wish." Luaccio smiled, "My guest." It was past midnight. This was probably the most difficult night for Ephraim to fall asleep in recent years. Dressed in his pajamas, he sat alone in the cold living room, fiddling with the knife in his hand. This knife was like his mascot. It had accompanied him in his rise to power, and it could even be said to have played an extremely crucial role. He was 14 years old and killed for the first time. He still felt uneasy, as if it was the first time he stabbed someone with a knife when he was 14 years old. Of course, he preferred it to be because of this, rather than because of the current situation. This made him feel that things were not under his control. It was a denial of his ability. Ephraim picked up the landline next to him. After waiting for a moment, he heard a slightly tired voice. "Old man, you seem to have contacted me the day before yesterday. So diligent, what's the matter?" Ephraim said slowly, "There's a man called Victor, is he one of your men?" "Victor?" The voice at the other end of the phone sounded surprised, asking, "He is indeed. Why, did he offend you?" Ephraim said indifferently, Nothing, but my men told me that a man called Victor caused a lot of trouble and affected a lot of business these days. Really? The person at the other end of the phone sighed. I'm afraid it's because of what happened recently. Old man, this guy is qualified to be a workaholic. Believe me, he's not against you. He just wants to find some clues like crazy. You know, the stolen painting has a great impact. I'm also under a lot of pressure. But don't worry, when this is over, I'll think of a way to deal with Victor. This guy is a thorn in the side. He's practically an arrogant guy. Ephraim suddenly said, Oh? From what you said, it seems that you, the boss of the police station, can't deal with a small inspector. I can't help it. Victor is a very senior guy, and has won a national medal. He's not a guy that can be casually cut off. Besides, I've been a little trouble recently. I don't want to make more trouble at this time. Old man, with your connections and information channels, haven't you heard any news about this painting? I think you should be able to help me. Ephraim narrowed his eyes, smiling. Old man, don't worry, I don't want to see your situation become worse. These 2 days, I'll let my men pay attention to this matter. If there's any news, I'll inform you at once. Thanks a lot, old man. We're good partners after all. Ephraim then hung up the phone. When he put down the phone, he nailed the knife in his hand to the table and sneered. It seems that this old man is no longer useful, so he picked up the phone again. His wife was still in the holiday house in the suburb. When he came back in the middle of the night, Victor talked with his wife on the phone. This was the most relaxed moment for Victor these days. He quietly lay on the bed in his downtown apartment, looking at the ceiling. Suddenly, the phone rang. It was a strange number, but obviously the voice from the phone was familiar. Mr. Victor, it's me. Chapter 291. The sun shone through the curtain and lit up the room. Vera's eyelids trembled slightly, then she opened them. She breathed the air of a new day. Although she still felt a little bad, she seemed to be in a good mood at the moment. When she sat up and stretched herself, she saw a small black card on the side of the pillow. It was like the size of the card she used to make the card magic. Vera frowned. She didn't remember ordering such a prop, but she didn't care too much about it. She had survived another full moon night. To her, this was something that could make her happy for a whole month. Then, when the next full moon came, she would be happy. So she picked up the black card with her fingers, subconsciously treating it as a poker card, and threw it out. The black card flew out and hit the wall, then slid down along the wall and became one of the many sundries in the room. Vera looked at the current state of the room, shaking her head with a wry smile. She didn't want to get into trouble, so she was afraid that before leaving this rented place, she would find someone to repair the damaged parts of the room. Vera got off the bed and walked out of the room with the quilt covering her body. The first thing she saw was Vicar. Vera shook her head, watching Vicar find a stool and sit 2 meters away from the door, facing her. He also held a fruit knife in his hand. As for now, he was dozing off. Vera walked over, lifting the stool with her foot. The vibration made Vicar wake up at once. The fruit knife in his hand fell to the ground with a clatter. Vera! You wake up. Are you all right? Vicar quickly stood up. Vera whispered, I think I will be better if I can have a delicious breakfast. Wait a minute, as long as you can eat, I will give you all the food in the fridge. Vicar said with an exaggerated expression, as long as you don't eat me. Vera rolled her eyes. Then she started to count her fingers. When she counted the 3rd finger, she gave it to Vicar. By the way, did you put me on the bed? Vera turned on the TV, and then asked Vicar who was making breakfast. How dare I? Vicar shook his head. You know how to climb to the bed this time? Vera shook her head. I forgot, probably. Vera was absent-minded for a moment. She seemed to remember that the last place she fell was the floor, and vaguely, did she hear any strange sound? After breakfast, Vera directly looked at Vicar. Get your tools ready. Tonight I will go to Ephraim's fortress to have a look. Today? Vicar was stunned. Are you sure? You need rest now. I'm recovering very well. I should be able to fully recover by noon. Vera said indifferently, although I'm not complete, at least, I'm better than an ordinary person. Let's take it as a relaxation. Boss, Mr. Vicar. His henchman sent him to the floor. The moment the elevator door opened, Ephem's appearance appeared in Victor's sight. Ha ha! My dear Vicar, I've been waiting for you for a long time. His hearty laughter was like seeing an old friend he hadn't seen for many years. The sincere smile on Ephem's face even gave Vicar an illusion that this was his old friend for decades. There are too many things in the police station. Forgive me, I can only come at this time of the night. Vicar also smiled. Ephem stepped forward and gave him a big hug, then put his hand on Vicar's shoulder and led him in, saying enthusiastically, I just opened a bottle of good wine. I bought it from Sotheby's in Italy last year, you must taste it. Really? Vicar said with a smile, then I really need to taste it, or I'm afraid I won't have a chance in my life. Ha 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 ha. Ephem laughed. No, you'll have a lot of chances in the future. As long as you like, you can not only taste these good wines, but also become one of the buyers. Vicar smiled without saying anything. Ephem said while opening the bottle, I'm 54 years old this year. Since I was 13 years old, I've been making a living. Do you know why I came out to make a living in the first place? I'd like to hear the details. A pair of leather shoes. Ephem recalled. The economy at that time was not like now, the whole country was engaged in the military. The military was developed, but other fields also collapsed. I was still in school in the winter, you know. I could only wear a pair of worn-out boots, and was the object of ridicule of the whole class. So from then on, I swore that as long as it's something I want, I'll try my best to get it. Vicar said indifferently, Mr. Ephem now has a wealth that ordinary people can't imagine. Ephem laughed. Come on, let's drink, don't talk about those unpleasant things. After drinking, let's talk about something else. Vicar squinted. Mr. Ephem, aren't you too happy today? Please don't forget that you're not in a good situation now. No, the worse the situation, the bigger the profit behind it. Ephem patted Vicar's shoulder. Come with me. He led Vicar to the central area of the living room. A painting of The Nameless Maiden was quietly placed on the table in the central area. It was lying flat. As a Muscovite, I think you must know what this painting is, right? Ephem said with a smile. Vicar glanced at it, nodded, and then sighed. A painting of 260 million euros, this world is crazy. But, Mr. Ephem, you let me see this painting, is it just to show off to me? No. I'm going to give this painting to you. Ephem suddenly said, and I can tell you that this is a real painting. Victor furrowed his brows. He didn't know what Ephem meant by a real painting, as if there was a fake one. The video he had and the one Yuri gave him didn't mention anything about the painting in detail. The video was only used to prove that the painting was bought by Ephem privately. The Nameless Maiden was a treasure passed down from generation to generation. It could be regarded as a national treasure. Ephem's behavior was trading a national treasure privately. Such a crime couldn't be easily exonerated. What do you want me to do? But at the same time, he keenly felt that Ephem had other plans. Ephem said at this time, You found his video from your subordinates. How did you get it? Vicar shook his head. I can't act rashly and alert the enemy. Of course, before I confirm Mr. Ephem's willingness to cooperate. Ephem rubbed his hands, nodding. You did the right thing. You should be careful and cautious. But now you don't need to start with your subordinate. That's because I know how this video got leaked. Next, it's time for you to prove to me that you have enough ability to be the boss of the police station. Ephem chuckled. This painting appeared in someone's house. Even if he didn't plead guilty, at least he couldn't escape the crime of secretly hiding a national treasure, right? Vicar asked calmly, Who is the other party? Ephem said slowly, It was a guy who escaped in the past and called himself an aristocrat. As for now, it's not a business that can be exposed to the public. In the past 10 years, this family started to develop a new business by smuggling private armies. They were supposed to hide in Morocco, but for some reason, they came to Moscow recently. You know how developed the river transportation in this city is. Vickers seemed to have thought of Ephem's plan. It was as he had expected. Chapter 292. Victor didn't respond in a hurry, but pondered for a while. But I'm afraid you can't recover your loss. He was referring to the deal that Ephem made with a sky-high price. Ephem sneered. This is just the first step. After that, I'll have a plan. Victor said slowly. It seems that Mr. Ephem's intention is not only to take revenge on the heir of the Typica family. Ephem put his arm around Victor's shoulder intimately, taking him to the front of the glass curtain wall in the building. Looking at the scenery outside, a sense of arrogance was emitted spontaneously. He smiled confidently with the tone of a successful man. There's nothing that can't be done in this world. It's just that you haven't thought of it yet. Why are most of the capable people in the world mediocre all their lives? That's because they haven't thought of it, or dare not think of it, or dare not do it. For example, you. He looked at Victor. You've been in the profession for so many years, why are you still a small inspector? You obviously have enough ability. But obviously you can think of it and do it now. And, with my support, your life will be wonderful in the future. Victor smiled gratefully. He reached out his hand, looking at Ephem. Then, please take care of me in the future, Mr. Ephem. Haha. I like straightforward people. Ephem grabbed Victor's palm directly. He was happy that the two could reach this consensus. As for how much Victor could meet his expectations, it didn't matter how much he could meet. As long as there was a conflict, it would be better to change one. Just like the old buddy of the boss of the police station, who was racking his brains for the recent official affairs. However, his expression suddenly froze at this moment, froze at Victor's action, froze at the handcuffs on his wrists. At the moment of shaking hands, Victor suddenly took out a handcuff from his back, and then gently smashed it on his wrist. It was fastened easily. What are you doing? Ephem frowned. Victor said indifferently, Mr. Ephem, I'm now officially resisting arrest. Because you are suspected of privately purchasing a national treasure and illegally possessing it, as well as suspected of bribing police officers, and I even suspect that you are engaged in illegal activities. Oh, by the way, you've already shown me the evidence, right? Her frozen smile finally thawed. Ephem widened his eyes, but he calmed down instantly, saying indifferently, I didn't expect that I would be cheated by such a little trick. But do you really think you can kill me like this? That's not for me to consider, Victor said expressionlessly, that's for the court to decide. What I need to do is to arrest the criminal when there is evidence. Prisoner, Ephem said disdainfully. He shook his head and joked, but don't forget whose place you are standing now. It's hard to say whether you can get out of here. Victor handcuffed one end of the handcuff on his own hand, shrugging. I don't think your men dare to do anything to me. He took out the phone. It's me, I'll bring a team here right away. The address is… Well, just say that I've found the hiding place of the nameless maiden and caught a criminal. Victor looked at the time on his watch again. About 10 minutes. Mr. Ephem, should we finish the bottle of famous wine you bought last year? To celebrate your arrest? However, Ephem uttered a low growl, pulling his arm hard. His body was huge, and his strength was unbelievably huge. With this tug, Victor's entire body was unable to stand steadily. Victor was shocked. He didn't think that this fat guy had such strength. At this moment, his body had been tightly held by Ephem's hands. You're just a small inspector, I don't mind you blackmailing me. Instead, I give you a chance to cooperate with me. You actually don't know what's good for you. Victor felt that his arms were almost broken under Ephem's tight grip. This guy's body was not made of soft fat, but rather strong muscles. I'll add one more crime, that is, assaulting a police officer. Victor struggled wildly, but still couldn't break free. The crazy squeeze made it difficult for him to breathe. Bang! At this moment, the glass curtain wall suddenly burst open, and a figure swayed into the room from the night sky. Broken glass, scattered across the floor like bricks and stones. Ephraim, who was strangling Victor with his arms, looked ferocious at this moment, but what he saw was a woman wearing a black leather coat and a clown mask. The voice that came from the voice changer sounded softly at this time. "Oh, go on, don't worry about me. I'm here to get something." With this, the woman wearing a clown mask quickly walked to the painting placed on the table, and picked it up with one hand. "How dare you?" Ephraim glared angrily. He could only choose to let go of Victor and rush towards the woman. However, even though he possessed enormous strength, his similarly enormous body made him appear extremely clumsy. "It seems that this is the most unskilled thing I've done." She shook her head. "This can only be regarded as robbing." She shook her head uninterestedly, taking out a finger-thick metal pipe from a backpack hanging on her waist, and threw it on the ground. The two ends of the metal pipe bounced off instantly, and then rapidly released a large amount of white mist. "Ah!" Ephraim still roared, but he could only choose to rush out of the range of the mist. But he could only watch the mysterious woman jump out of the broken window with the painting, and he couldn't stop her. He hurriedly ran to the window, and watched as the woman slid down the rope and finally landed on the ground. He watched as the woman waved at him after she landed. He angrily grabbed the rope and pulled the cart a few times. "Ah! Ah! Ah!" It seemed that he could only vent the anger in his heart by roaring like this. "Boss!" Finally, his subordinate rushed in, reaching out to push away the thick smoke, and came to him. His subordinate looked at Victor, who fell to the ground. He seemed to be in a coma, but his and Ephraim's arms were still handcuffed together. His subordinate could only ask anxiously, What happened?" "F&C." Ephraim clenched his fist, fiercely hitting a piece of glass next to him. "The real F&C is here. That damned clown, he stole my painting." "Boss, this..." His subordinate frowned. "Isn't this the fake painting you used to frame the Typica family? It's okay to steal it, as long as you're okay." "Idiot." Ephraim gritted his teeth. "Do you think a fake painting can kill them? Wouldn't they insist that it's just a fake, and that it's just for show? Is there a law that forbids private possession of the fake, the nameless maiden? If I don't take out the real one, how can I nail him to death directly? Anyway, this painting will eventually return to the gallery, but I have plenty of ways to get it out." "This..." His subordinate suddenly broke out in cold sweat. "Find this clown for me," Ephraim said with hatred. "Find this woman even if you have to turn the city upside down. I want her to suffer a fate worse than death. You guys go and chase that clown." His subordinate hurriedly ordered loudly. A group of people hurriedly took the elevator and left. "Boss, how to deal with this Victor?" Ephraim frowned, glancing at the unconscious Victor, coldly snorting. "Deal with him. And prepare the car, I'm going to the airport." "Now?" Ephraim nodded. "I'm not sure if Victor has any other means. But that video must be released by the Typica family. They haven't taken any action these 2 days. I don't know what they are planning. Too many people saw me at the auction that day, so I have to hide outside temporarily, so that I have more room to return. In case something happens, I'm abroad, so they can't do anything to me." His subordinate looked embarrassed. "But boss, I'm afraid you can't leave tonight." "Why?" Ephraim gave a start. "Didn't I ask you to book the tickets for all the time this week?" "Sorry boss, I didn't book it," the subordinate said slowly. Ephraim narrowed his eyes. He had a bad premonition, which made his heartbeat speed up. At this time, his subordinate's phone suddenly rang. "Well, I know. Invite them up." "Well, it's the boss's order." "Who did you let up?" Ephraim said gloomily. The subordinate said indifferently, "Police." He glanced at Victor, who was lying on the ground. I think it should be Inspector Victor who called them here. You betrayed me? The subordinate waved his hand, raising his eyebrows. Sorry, boss. I just hope my salary can be more. In addition, I actually hate to keep guarding this elevator door, doing the same job as an airport security inspector. After landing, she didn't run too far away. Wearing a clown mask, she quickly ran out of the range of this building. In an alley, she looked at the famous painting that finally fell into the hands of the owner of the FNC painting. But she didn't look at it carefully, but directly tore off the frame, took out the drawing paper, then rolled it up and stuffed it into a flower tube. At this time, she tilted her head, listening to the voice. Vera, FM's people will find you soon. You're really capable and efficient. Vera took off her mask, smiling. She walked into the depths of this alley while smiling. You're going to collect things. I'm going to tease these guys. She had come to the depths of this alley, then threw the painting tube to one side of the dustbin here. And on the other side, there was a huge object covered with black cloth. Vera whistled, lifting the black cloth with one hand, then turned over and sat on this huge object. Boom! A roar suddenly sounded. Rushed out of this alley. Black Dodge Tomahawk. The black Dodge Tomahawk galloped on the road at a high speed. The 8.3-liter engine was enough to let it release a sound like a dragon's roar when running. Vera enjoyed the feeling of flying at such a high speed, which made her heart beat slightly excitedly. For her, it was more like a real life. She turned around to take a look. There were a few black cars chasing after her. But for her, it was impossible to catch up with this Dodge Tomahawk on such a crowded road in Moscow. When one of the cars was about to catch up, Vera suddenly swayed her body, letting the Dodge Tomahawk pass through the two cars in front of her calmly. In the blink of an eye, she had already left the car that was about to catch up with her. However, at the fork in the road ahead, there were two cars driving in the opposite direction, almost blocking her path on this small section of the road. Vera didn't panic. She gripped the brake hard, swinging the Dodge Tomahawk, and her body almost stuck to the road as she slid sideways. In the end, she put her legs on the ground, straightened the motorcycle, and completed a U-turn. Then she accelerated again. Boom! The Dodge Tomahawk, which exceeded the acceleration of most sports cars, was like a flying dragon in an instant. It was crashing into the car behind. Don't be afraid. She doesn't dare to hit us. She's bluffing. No. But the driver, looking at the Dodge Tomahawk that was about to hit him, instinctively twisted his steering wheel. The car instantly deviated from the original lane and hit another car of his companion. On the road, the sound of the emergency brake and the car collision sounded at the same time. Bang! Bang! Bang, bang, bang! The cars that collided in a series of cars crashed into a tragic scene on the road in an instant. Vera didn't stop the Dodge Tomahawk, but directly stood up in the car. She took off the helmet, threw it out of the road, and opened her hands like this. The Dodge Tomahawk, which was speeding forward, came with a huge wind pressure. The airflow behind Vera seemed to have turned into a pair of invisible wind wings, making her body infinitely light, as if she could fly at any time. She let out her cheers heartily. She knew she was alive. Boss Luo walked to the depths of the alley, looking at the painting tube next to the dustbin. He smiled and picked it up without any pressure. He opened it, took out the drawing paper, and then opened it. Anna sneered at this time, saying indifferently, F&C probably didn't expect that the thing they tried so hard to get would fall into the hands of someone who didn't do anything. Luochu said casually, I just passed by and picked up this thing. Theoretically, the thing placed here should be ownerless, right? Anna sneered, so you feel at ease, right? She thought it was a right choice to waste a little bit of soul value to restore her ability to speak. At least, she could still mock the other party when she had no choice. This was better than doing nothing, at least a little bit. A little bit of comfort could be considered. Luochu rolled up the drawing paper again, putting it back into the painting tube, and then threw it on the ground. Miss Anna, Don't you want to see the end? Let's go and see what you want to see. Anna was stunned. You don't want this, the nameless maiden? Luocio said indifferently, this is also fake. Chapter 293. Feeling something slapping his face, Victor slowly opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was not Efim, but one of Efim's subordinates. Victor only had a vague impression of this subordinate of Efim. There was no conversation between them. But he didn't have time to be surprised. More surprising things were yet to come. That was Efim's current appearance. Efim was actually tied up at this moment. He looked very angry, obviously extremely dissatisfied with this situation. But he couldn't do anything, because this subordinate was holding a deadly pistol in his hand. It was clear that something had happened while Victor had been unconscious for a short period of time. Even Victor found that he had been separated from Efim. He had to be vigilant, looking at this subordinate with a weapon in his hand. He didn't seem to want to hurt him. Victor couldn't help but feel so confused. At this time, he stood up. This subordinate just looked at him and smiled slightly. You. Victor couldn't figure out the situation in front of him. This subordinate made a gesture at this time. Victor nodded hesitantly. The two walked to a corner, paying attention to the tied-up Efim while talking. The man said, I think there's still a minute before your colleagues will be here, Mr. Victor. The next thing will be handed over to you. At the same time, this subordinate put away the pistol in his hand and stretched out his hands towards Victor. This was a gesture of wanting to be handcuffed by him. Victor frowned. I don't understand what you mean. It's very simple. The subordinate quickly said, Inspector Victor, arrest me too. After that, I'll apply to be a witness to testify something about Efim, so that I can get a reduced sentence. You're from the Typica family? Victor couldn't help but say in shock. He couldn't help but think so. Thinking about it, he had to deal with Efim because of Yuri's threat. In that case, this subordinate's words were quite obvious. I have nothing to do with the Typica family. Unexpectedly, this subordinate shook his head, giving an answer that made Victor more surprised. As for who I am, I think, Mr. Victor, you'll know soon. Ding! It was the sound of the elevator doors opening. The man hurriedly urged, Come on, lock me up too. Wait, you need to make it clear first. Victor frowned. But time did not wait for him. The man shook his head and quickly picked up Victor's handcuffs, cuffed his hands, and slowly squatted on the ground. The door opened and 3 uniformed police officers rushed in. They happened to see the man squatting on the ground. They walked in front of Victor and hurriedly asked. Victor and the man looked at each other. The man suddenly said, Inspector, Efim hid a lot of criminal evidence in the security room behind a bookcase upstairs. I'm willing to be a witness, really. I only ask for a lighter sentence. Oh dear. Inspector Victor, what should we do now? A police officer quickly looked at Victor after hearing that. It was hard to stop halfway. Victor took a deep breath, saying slowly, You go upstairs and see if there's a security room. In addition, let the people downstairs watch the entrance and exit of the building. Don't let anyone leave here first. Yes. The police officer saluted and hurriedly left. This building was very conspicuous in the vicinity and was famous enough. At this time, it was not really a time when the streets were empty, but there were several police cars surrounding it. Moreover, the onlookers clearly saw that several policemen arrested the famous Mr. Efim. Even if there were no reporters present, the flashes of the onlookers' mobile phones were obviously not worse than if there were reporters present. Victor walked out. He lit a cigarette and smoked slowly. Watching the scene of Efim being sent into the police car, he was not happy anyway. At this time, his eyes suddenly saw a black limousine parked on the roadside. When the window of the back seat of the limousine was lowered, Victor saw a familiar face. It was Brubov, the one who told him at the beginning that the first auction of The Nameless Maiden was held in the hotel. Victor's surprise didn't last long. He soon calmed down, walking down the stairs and ordering the police officers to take action. Finally, he crossed the crowd, quietly circled to the side of the limousine, and sat in the back seat of the limousine from the other side. "I'm glad to see you come out safely, Victor." Brubov smiled at this time. "I was right, you really gave me a big surprise." "Brubov, tell me honestly, what did you do?" Victor asked with a serious face. Brubov closed his eyes, saying slowly, "Victor, do you remember what my dream was when I was young?" Victor was stunned. He didn't understand why he would bring this up, but he still nodded subconsciously. "You said that you want to change this country, so you've been fighting for it. Finally, you have entered the upper class. Brubov, with your current ability, you can do something for this country. But it's not enough." Brubov shook his head. "Even if I'm a very rich businessman, even if I know many officials, I'm still a businessman. I need more opportunities to speak." Remembering Efem's identity as a member of parliament, Victor suddenly understood something. You want to take Efem's position? Efem can't escape this time." Brubov sneered. "Once he is convicted, someone will recommend me to take his place and take a seat in the parliament." Victor couldn't help being silent. After a long time, he stared at Brubov, his friend for many years, and said slowly, "Efem's henchman was bribed. In this case, you could have pulled him down long ago. Why did you wait until today? Why did you wait until today to catch him? Victor, don't you understand? Haven't you thought about why you were caught by the Typica family? What I mean is, this lawless family caught you but didn't kill you. Instead, they let you help deal with Efem?" Brubov said softly, "Victor, my strength alone is always limited. I need a partner, a real partner. I need you. Now your boss in the police station is dying. After this, Victor, you should prepare well. Your official career will go further, and it will be a big step. What's the relationship between you and the Typica family?" Victor suddenly took a cold breath and blurted out. Brubov glanced at him and just smiled. "The Typica family is my partner for now. I didn't expect that there's a big crocodile behind this who wants to deal with Efem." Behind the black limousine, Anna muttered. She suddenly looked up at Luaccio. "When did Yuri start to contact Brubov?" "Contact?" Luaccio shook his head. "They didn't contact each other before. The one who really contacted was the real heir of the Typica family. Do you know what kind of business the Typica family does? They hope to get more transportation channels, so they came to Moscow just to find a partner. Of course, as you see, Miss Anna, it is this Mr. Brubov whom the Typica family is looking for." Luaccio said indifferently, "Then coincidentally, Mr. Yuri also planned to revenge. He wanted to get the power of revenge, so I think Mr. Brubov is the real power we provided to him." When Anna couldn't help but smile bitterly. Luaccio said softly, "I think it should be since you took this painting out of the gallery. Brubov intended to let Victor be the new chief of police, so he specially told him the place of the first auction. He hoped that by guiding Victor to intervene in this matter, he could get enough benefits. Mr. Yuri wanted to revenge Efem, so the more miserable Efem's fate was, the happier he would be. Brubov bought over Efem's men, and in fact, he already had a lot of evidence of Efem's crimes. Therefore, Mr. Yuri was naturally willing to come forward and do Brubov a favor, so that Victor would eventually become the person who arrested Efem." Anna gritted her teeth. She looked at the person who brought her back from death temporarily, without any gratitude. She just said with hatred, "Brubov will deal with Efem. Efem won't have a good end, and you, knowing this, still took away all of Yuri's. Devil. You're more evil than the devil." Luaccio said indifferently, "We didn't force anyone. Mr. Yuri chose the road of no return because he was shot by Miss Anna on the platform of the subway station, right?" Anna's lips moved slightly, but she couldn't say anything. She could only raise her eyes, looking at the moon after the full moon. Although the 3 shots did hit Mr. Yuri's body and made him bleed a lot, Luochu said slowly, but I think it's not enough to kill Mr. Yuri.
Miss Anna, did you calculate the shooting position?
Because it's so accurate that I have to doubt it. Of course. He shook his head. I don't think Mr. Yuri can doubt it. Chapter 294. I didn't want to kill him at all. Anna covered her face with her hands. Her voice came out from her fingers and became unclear. But I had to do this. He shouldn't threaten Efim. Since he escaped, why did he come back? She needed to say these things. They were buried in her heart, making her unable to breathe at this moment. Fortunately, the person he wanted to see was me. Anna put down her hand and took a deep breath. She said in a low voice with tears in her eyes, "Yes, I did shoot him, but I never thought of killing him.
He may be seriously injured, but at least he can lie safely in the hospital bed.
Efim will never let go of anyone who threatens him. Yuri told him that he shouldn't come back." Luochu looked at Anna, saying expressionlessly, "But Miss Anna, you did shoot him, didn't you? No matter what the reason is, the moment you shot him, Mr. Yuri was destined to suffer the greatest pain. Or, are you going to confess to him later to ask for his forgiveness?" Anna shook her head. She took another deep breath. "I won't do that. He just needs to lie in the hospital for a while. I won't show up in front of him again. Even if he doesn't forgive me in this life, I have no opinion. Even if he lied to me in the end and didn't tell me that he sold the painting to Efim and asked me to come back for Efim, even if I lost my life, I won't blame him." She sneered at herself. "But I didn't expect, and he probably didn't expect, that we would meet you," Luochu said indifferently. "As guests, whether it's Miss Anna or Mr. Yuri, their desire is too strong." As the boss of the club, Luochu didn't intend to explain to the guests. Their strong desire was like luring a hungry wolf. When the transaction was triggered, the boss with the supreme power of the club also needed to assume the obligation in front of the guests. "Really?" Anna smiled bitterly. She was very clear about the anger and resentment in her heart when Efim pinched her neck, as well as how unwilling she was to accept it. "It took me 3 years to finally get close to Efim and gain his trust after exhausting all means," Anna said in a low voice. "How can I die before I send this demon to hell with my own hands and make him eat all his sins? I can't let myself die. Even if I die, I will drag him into hell with me. I want to live until I can see him suffer pain and anxiety. I want to see him lose everything. I want to see him suffer a fate worse than death." Anna gritted her teeth. Her eyes were filled with resentment. "I don't care what you do." "So, from the moment you met Mr. Yuri, you had already decided to make use of him?" Luochu asked curiously. Anna took a deep breath and smiled bitterly. Every day, I can only force a smile beside Efim. He never really trusted me. I had to do something. I had to tempt him into making a mistake. When I met Yuri in the art gallery, I knew my chance had come. I know that Efim is a person who never knows his place. I told him my plan, and he even agreed at once." Anna lowered her head and said softly, "I've known him since that day. God really gave him unparalleled talent. But he didn't get the opportunity to match this talent. He had his own dream. He hoped to be a real painter. He hoped his works could be recognized by the whole world. He hoped to make his own sky. But I finally made use of his dream," Anna said faintly. "I told him that there was a chance to make his wish come true. In the beginning, he didn't know about this. Instead, he wholeheartedly imitated the nameless maiden. It was only because I told him that this was the only way to show off his strength to a potential investor. But in the end, he still noticed." Anna shook her head. "It's not a chance to be famous. He's just a tool for Efim to make money. He can't really let his paintings be known to the whole world. He didn't even have the chance to paint what he wanted to paint. All of them were merely other people's belongings. But he finally finished the first painting, the nameless maiden. I'm afraid it's because of you, Miss Anna." Anna's shoulders slightly shrugged, saying sadly, I know it all. I can clearly feel his feelings for me, but I won't and can't respond to him. Because I was constantly reminding myself not to forget my purpose. I must let Ephraim suffer the punishment he deserved. Only in this way, only in this way, only in this way, can those who suffered misfortune because of Ephraim, this devil, rest in peace. Las Patascaya mining area? Luocio suddenly said. You know? Anna suddenly raised her head. Boss Luo said indifferently, Nothing, I just met a gentleman who also came out of this mining area. Really? Anna didn't ask who the man was. She just heaved a heavy sigh. Las Patascaya mining area, that's where I grew up. But it has always been controlled by others. The capital constantly squeezed us, and it became worse in the hands of Ephraim. When I was young, there was a hero in our mining area. I thought our life would be better, but unfortunately, Anna said bitterly, the hero is gone, my home, my relatives are gone. But she also said bitterly, but I will never let go of Ephraim who ruled the mining area like a devil. I want to end it all. She also said sadly, no matter what I have to sacrifice, no matter how much Yuri hates me, no matter how much he hates me. Her eyes were shining with crystal luster that didn't exist in the night. Seeing this, Luocio gently turned around, carrying Anna on his back, saying slowly, It's good that Miss Anna has been aware of this from the beginning. But it's also good that you can say it out. The hatred of more than 10 years was hidden in the bottom of her heart. She couldn't tell anyone, nor could she. It was too heavy. Anna broke down and cried bitterly. He didn't see her most vulnerable side from this back, but he could hear the whisper of the soul behind her, gradually becoming lighter. Luocio didn't turn back until the crying faded and calmness was restored. He stretched out his hand, and the servant girl brought him a square handkerchief. Luocio walked to Anna, giving her the square handkerchief and whispering, Do you feel better? Anna gave a start. She subconsciously looked at the square handkerchief. She didn't know why she had a feeling of wanting to cry again, but she also seemed to feel an unprecedented relief. She took a deep breath, looking at the police car that was about to leave. Since Brubov was involved in this matter, Ephraim could only get a bad result. Can we still make a deal now? Of course, at any time. Luocio nodded with a smile. I think, bang. All of a sudden, a huge noise sounded, which was so shocking. When they turned around, they saw an SUV had hit the police car that was escorting Ephraim. At this time, a man wearing a black mask rushed out of the SUV. He held an automatic rifle and began to shoot. This made the few police officers hide behind their respective police cars in fear. At the same time, Ephraim climbed out of the hit police car in a panic. His hands were locked in handcuffs, and he seemed to curse loudly at this time. The man shot at Ephraim's feet with the automatic rifle, and then pointed at the SUV. Chapter 295. In the car, one of the men with a black hood cut the handcuffs on Ephraim's hands roughly with a pair of iron pliers. But Ephraim scolded, Is this how you guarantee the safety of your customers? Don't you know that I would have been killed if you had hit me a little bit? Are you dead? The other man who was driving said indifferently. Ephraim snorted, Is this the service attitude of your Michael Club? Every year, I have to pay hundreds of millions in membership fees just to get this kind of service? Tell me your names. I'll definitely complain to Mr. Sun. First of all, the man who was driving didn't turn his head, saying indifferently, You didn't tell us in advance that you were in danger. Secondly, when we arrived, you were already in the police car. We had no interest in rushing into the police station to save you. Finally, my name is Tianzue, the one next to me is Tianbai. You're welcome to complain. Ephraim snorted coldly. He just wanted to vent his dissatisfaction, because he was extremely angry that he became a prisoner overnight and was even betrayed by his confidant. Before he was taken away by the police had already pried open his safe room. The The things hidden inside were enough for him to have dozens of reasons not to stay in this country anymore. Where are we going now? After calming down, Ephraim quickly asked. Send you to the river. I'm afraid it's difficult for you to board the plane now. Let's go by water. Tianzue said indifferently, Don't worry, you're a member of the club, you won't lose the membership fee you paid. We'll send you away safely. Well, according to the information you filled in from the premise, the first place you want to be sent to when you're in danger is Italy. Ephraim clenched his fist. Things happened too fast tonight. If he left here, he would lose nearly half of his wealth. Wait, I can't leave like this. Ephraim gritted his teeth. At least there's one guy, I don't want him to have a good time before I leave. Mr. Ephraim, we don't recommend you to complicate matters, Tianbai said indifferently at this time, especially when you need to escape. The idea of revenge out of anger is something that only fools and boors will do. But Ephraim sneered, What Michael Club? When I first joined the guild, all of you made it sound so nice. Now, can't you do anything? Give me the phone, I want to talk to your boss. Tianzue looked at Tianbai and shrugged. Tianbai gave Ephraim a mobile phone. Heaven's defeat? What is it? I am Ephraim. Oh, so it's Mr. Ephraim. The voice on the other end of the phone said with a light smile, It seems that Tianzue and Tianbai have successfully brought you out. Mr. Ephraim, don't worry, we will send you safely to. Oh yes, Italy. No. Before that, I have one more request. Ephraim snorted. He looked at Tianzue and Tianbai in the carriage and said coldly, However, your men don't seem to have a good service attitude. It's like this, Mr. Ephraim. Tianzue and Tianbai were only responsible for transportation. If it's any other request that's beyond their delivery duties, I have to apologize here, but they won't agree to it. I don't care. Before leaving, I want you to help me get rid of a guy. I don't like to play games with my enemies slowly after going to Italy. I like to make a quick decision. Ephraim said in a low voice. I don't care what these two guys are responsible for, but I believe that there's nothing in the world that money can't buy. Help me get rid of my enemy, I'll give you any money. The phone was silent for a while, then the voice of Mr. Sun sounded. Mr. Ephraim, please give the phone to Tianbai. The phone was soon handed to Tianbai. Tianbai listened calmly at this time. Listen, the boss asked us to restrain ourselves as much as possible during this time. However, since Ephraim is so angry and willing to be slaughtered by us, we have no reason to refuse the request of our respected member. Remember, be quick. After all, Moscow is still the territory of Dongjing. Don't cause unnecessary trouble. Tianbai nodded and said indifferently, I see. He turned off the phone and looked at Ephraim, saying slowly, So, Mr. Ephraim, please tell me the address of your enemy. I think it's best to let you get on the boat before dawn. Ephraim snorted, squinting his eyes and saying an address slowly. A whoosh. Rumble. That was the sound of the subsiding engine. The Dodge Tomahawk that finally stopped also turned off the headlights. Vera took off her helmet and shook her hair before walking down. After hearing the sound, Vicar hurried out of the house. He opened his hands and showed a happy look. Dear FNC, congratulations on completing a successful assignment. Where's the painting? Vera smiled indifferently. I hope I didn't break it when I opened the frame. Oh, definitely not. Vicar smiled and said, I've seen it, there's no damage at all. In other words, I've never seen such a complete one. Vera didn't want to talk nonsense with Vicar here. She threw the key to Vicar and walked into the house. The painting tube was casually placed on the sofa in the living room. Vera turned over the back of the sofa and sat on it. Then she opened the painting tube and took out the nameless maiden that was hidden inside. She smiled slowly. After a hard day's work, it was a good way to comfort herself to appreciate her spoils of war. Vicar, who had pushed the Dodge Tomahawk into the garage, came in at this time, whistling. How does it feel to hold a national treasure in your hand? Unexpectedly, Vera suddenly frowned and said coldly, "Terrible!" "Terrible?" Vicar gave a start. Vera tore the painting in her hand into two halves, saying indifferently, "This painting is fake." Vicar hurriedly picked up the torn paper and said in disbelief, "Is this a fake? But this is obviously from Ephraim. But when I went to take it back, there was nothing strange." Vera sighed and said, "Look at the lower right edge of the drawing paper." Vicar subconsciously turned over the painting paper, looking at the place Vera said. Suddenly, Vicar opened his mouth, and his expression was very interesting, because there was a line of very clear words clearly printed in this place. "Made in China this. What's going on?" Vicar grabbed his hair and said in confusion, "Wait, let me think. This painting was bought by Ephraim and then you took it from him. Then this is a fake. That is to say, in the manor auction this is a fake." No. When the manor auction, so many collectors, how could they not see that this is a fake? Vera also leaned on the sofa, frowning. At that time, Ephraim was discussing with a policeman to frame the owner of the manor with this painting. Well, he wouldn't use such an obvious fake. But if what he took out is a real painting, but what you brought back is a fake. Vicar felt that his IQ was not enough, saying blankly, "So where is the real, the nameless maiden? Maybe one person will know," Vera suddenly said. Vera looked at Vicar, and Vicar also looked at Vera. Both of them almost said in unison, "The owner of the manor." Ding dong. At this time, Vicar's notebook in the living room suddenly rang. Vicar subconsciously opened it to have a look. At first glance, he whispered, "Ephraim was taken away from the police car." According to Edgar, this was a very rare kind of wine. But Yuri didn't taste the difference between this and the inferior vodka he was used to drinking. So what if he became the heir of the Typica family? So what if he had mountains of money and beauties? Under such an identity, he was still Yuri, not the real heir of the Typica family who had received countless education and knew how to enjoy this kind of rare wine and taste its unique flavor. Just now Edgar said that the police had officially arrested Ephraim. Based on the long-existing cooperation between the Typica family and Brubov, Ephraim had no way to turn over this time. It seemed that for a big shot like Ephraim, it was far more painful for him to lose everything and spend his life in prison than to let him leave the world directly. It should be a good time to celebrate, right? Yuri thought so, but he didn't know why. He just felt that such a rare and delicious wine seemed to have no taste. "It tastes awful." He shook his head and laughed at himself. He even didn't know what to laugh at himself. Was this a ridiculous life? Was this real and illusory wealth? Or this short life? The revenge was almost successful, but it seemed that he didn't have that kind of carefree feeling. Yes, he didn't have the feeling of ecstasy and laughter that he thought he could have. Yuri subconsciously grabbed the brush next to him, and then mixed the paints casually. He stood in front of the drawing board for a long time, but he didn't draw the first stroke. He suddenly found that he didn't know what he should draw. Finally, Yuri waved his hand abruptly, drawing a straight line on the paper with the paintbrush, as if he was going to split the paper into halves. He heavily threw the brush on the ground. "Ah!" He began to break the drawing board in front of him. He knelt on the ground, grabbing his hair with both hands and putting his head on the floor. "Ah! Ah! Ah! Ah!" He was crying. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. It was Edgar's voice. "Sir, are you all right?" After a moment of silence, Yuri asked through the door. "Sir, I have to tell you, just now there was news that Ephraim seemed to have been rescued by someone." Edgar's voice was a little fast. "Although I think the best choice for Ephraim at this time is to escape as soon as possible. But it's not impossible that he will be angry and come to revenge. Well, we still don't know the origin of the person who rescued him and how powerful he is." Chapter 296. Since Mr. Victor left, Yelgo found that his treatment seemed to be much better. Although he was still chained to the wall, The length of the chain was long enough for him to reach the table in the basement. Oh yes, he could also get the food on the table. Except that he was still chained. Well, at least he had food and drink, which was good enough. Yelgo had to comfort himself in this way. He kept asking the guards where Mr. Victor had gone and whether he had been harmed, but he couldn't get the answer. Yelgo always thought that he was a very optimistic person. However, no matter how optimistic and self-comforting he was, he felt more and more uneasy. Especially at that moment there was a sound outside. After the person guarding him hurriedly ran out, this kind of uneasiness almost solidified. This was because after the first sound was heard, more and more sounds were heard. It was as if someone was fighting outside. Is anyone there? Let me out. What the hell happened outside? Yelgo couldn't help but shout loudly. Bang 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 bang. Is anyone there? Yelgo forcefully pulled the chain that locked him, but it was nailed to the wall. It was very sturdy. Yelgo showed a hesitant look. Finally, he seemed to make up his mind. He took a deep breath at this time, grabbing a section of the chain with both hands and began to pull it hard. He forcefully gritted his teeth. His arms suddenly swelled up. His teeth suddenly became sharper, and his pupils changed a little. His ears seemed to be pulled by something, becoming longer and sharper. His fingernails also became sharp like claws. Ah! Yelgo growled in a low voice, and the chain was broken. The abnormality on his body disappeared at this moment. Yelgo quickly took a few deep breaths, adjusting his heart rate, and then walked to the door of the basement. He opened it, poked his head out to take a look, and then slipped out. In fact, he was rejoicing that he had finally waited until there was no one around. Why can FM be rescued? It was a questioning tone. Lucio looked at Anna, who was scolding him. Instead of answering, he asked, "Why can't FM be rescued?" Anna looked at the chaotic scene. After the SUV left, the police still didn't dare to come out from their hiding spots. She gritted her teeth and said, "Aren't you here to deal with FM? Are you just going to watch him get rescued?" "Miss Anna," Lucio said seriously, "I think you have misunderstood something. We didn't say we were going to deal with FM. There was no such thing in the past. In the future, if there isn't a reason, there won't be one in the future. But Yuri wants revenge. We have already given him the power to take revenge." Lucio shook his head and said, "As for whether he can succeed, that is not in our agreement." Anna glanced at him hatefully, but looked away. She knew that every word this person said was the truth. Whatever she wanted, it was her personal wish, and the other party would fulfill that wish. She gave it, but she couldn't get the desired result. She had tried hard, but she couldn't achieve the desired result, as if it was a trick of fate. Anna gritted her teeth and suddenly said, "Yuri has lost everything. I can't let him sacrifice everything to get such a result. Tell me, can FM get away or not?" Lucio was silent for a moment and suddenly asked, "Miss Anna, you mean you want to peep into the future, right? What do you mean?" Anna frowned. Lucio said, "Miss Anna wants to know whether FM can escape or not. Then I think what you really mean is whether FM can safely get through this crisis and get away with it, right? Please forgive me for being long-winded, because I need to confirm the customer's needs." Anna nodded directly. Anna didn't have time to discuss the future with Lucio. She said anxiously, "I don't care about the future, I just want to know the result." "Sorry." Lucio shook his head slowly. "It's not that we don't like you, but I'm afraid Miss Anna can't afford this part of the price. Even if you use up all the trading volume of your soul. Moreover, I have to tell you that even if you peep into the future may be changed because of the actions of the peeper. So about the goods that can peep into the future, I'm afraid it's the least cost-effective thing. I'm not one of them." Not to mention Anna, even Lucio himself had a sudden idea of future information. But that was a price that he, as a boss, couldn't afford at present. Not to mention an ordinary person. "Stop it. After all, this is just an excuse for you not to do it. You can say whatever you want, but it's just a lie. Anna didn't know the true horror behind these words, nor did she know what was behind the topic of peeking into the future. She was just a very ordinary girl, an ordinary girl who gave up a lot of things for revenge. She only took it as an excuse for him not to help. From the very beginning, she defined this weird club boss as a guy like a devil, who only wanted to get everything of human beings. Devils reap without sowing and get the biggest benefit with the least cost, which was the most normal thing. If Miss Anna thinks so from the bottom of your heart, we won't argue. We can understand the customer's anxious mood. Luochu shook his head and didn't want to talk more about this issue, but said softly, "But I can tell you where Ephraim wants to go now." "Well, don't worry, this part is free, you can take it as a gift." "Where to?" Anna asked hurriedly. "The manor." Endless screams and screams were heard. In the building of the manor, several men of the Typica family in white suits surrounded Yuri and the butler Edgar, running down the stairs quickly. One of them kept listening to the situation from the walkie-talkie. "Damn it! Only one person, you let him break into the house. Has your physical strength been drained by the women here? These two families are not human beings. They are as agile as hounds. And they are so accurate. Almost all of our men were killed in an instant. Try to hold him. Before we send the young master away, even if you die, you have to hold him." Ah! Click! The walkie-talkie suddenly gave out a harsh sound of electric current, and lost the voice of the opponent. "Respond." The man looked at the walkie-talkie in his hand with an ugly face. He knew what happened. "Go quickly," Edgar said calmly. "Don't let the sacrifice be in vain." But the old butler was also a little worried. Although this manor was not like the headquarters of the Typica family in Morocco, at least there were a lot of bodyguards here. It was just an intruder who didn't need to escort the master away. Edgar thought so before. However, in a short period of time, the invaders seemed to have entered a no-man's land as they killed their way in and continuously broke through the manor's defensive line. Thus, Edgar had no choice but to prioritize Yuri's safety. "Sir, why haven't you put on the bulletproof vest?" Edgar glanced at Yuri at this time. After he pulled Yuri out of the study, he found that Yuri was not in a good state. The old butler even sensed some strange emotions from him. That was, Yuri was not afraid at this time. He didn't seem to be in a good state. It was as if the approaching danger was nothing to him. Yuri said slowly, "No need. Anyway, it's just a matter of time for me to escape or not. I just want to know who broke in." Bang. Chapter 297. Carrying the Benelli M1 on his shoulder, the man who broke the door looked at Yuri and his companions who were rushing down the stairs. "It seems that he finally found the right person." Tianbai sneered, "This manor is really big." As he spoke, Tianbai suddenly shifted his body. In that split second, a bullet brushed past him and hit the door behind him. Tianbai instantly waved the Benelli M1 in his hand, and pulled the trigger without looking at the position. At the moment when he shot, a figure was shot into a hornet's nest, with blood dripping. Benelli M1. The power of the shotgun was too horrible. "Take the young master away, Mr. Edgar," the head of the bodyguards of the Typica family said quickly, and together with several companions, they crazily suppressed the man, Tianbai with firepower. "Go to hell." A bodyguard of the Typica family directly bit off the safety pin of the grenade, and threw it towards Tianbai. Tianbai's eyes narrowed. Instead of retreating, he used the Benelli M1 in his hand like a baseball bat and accurately hit the grenade flying toward him. It hit the target. The grenade flew back. Bang! The power of the explosion directly blew up a staircase. At the moment of the explosion, the butler quickly threw Yuri to the ground. But the airflow and loud sound of the explosion made him dizzy. Yuri climbed up from the ground, shaking his head, but still seeing stars. The tinnitus made him feel that everything in front of him seemed to be shaking. but he could clearly see that those bodyguards fell down one by one, and turned into badly mutilated corpses. He saw Edgar, who fell on the ground. The old man pushed him and blocked the impact of the airflow for him. But now he was motionless, and Yuri didn't know whether he was dead or alive. "Who are you?" Yuri took a deep breath at this moment. Was he afraid? He himself didn't know either, but it was clear that the most basic of human instincts still made his voice become nervous. But Tianbai was obviously not interested in talking more. He raised the Benelli M1 in his hand, aiming at Yuri directly. Yuri could only retreat in panic, but finally pushed against the wall. Finding that he had no way back, he couldn't help sweating. "Wait!" At this moment, a voice that did not belong to this place suddenly rang out. When they looked towards the source of the sound, they saw a huge figure slowly walking in through the door that had been broken open by Tianbai. Yuri instantly saw the man's appearance clearly. He opened his eyes wide and gritted his teeth. "Ephraim?" Seeing Yuri for the first time, Ephraim frowned, then looked around and snorted. "It's really you. I knew it. That bitch Anna must be lying to me. She didn't kill you. Humph. What's more, I didn't expect that you, a poor tramp, could become a member of the Tipica family. But," Ephraim sneered, "no matter who you are, I'll take your life now." Yuri was stunned. However, he suddenly had an idea. "Wait. I'm not the heir of the Tipica family," he said quickly. "I'm just a substitute for that guy. He's the one who wants to deal with you." "Substitute?" Ephraim frowned. "Where's the real heir?" While counting, Ephraim took a pistol from Tianbai with a cruel face. "If you dare to say you don't know, then go to hell. I'll send you to see your old lover." "Wait." Yuri swallowed his saliva, saying quickly, "I can take you to him. I know where he is. But you have to let me go. Really. Or else, he can escape from this place right away." Ephraim suddenly narrowed his eyes. But Tianbai beside him suddenly said, "Mr. Ephraim, I don't want to waste time. If the person you want to kill leaves, we won't continue to help you find him. You have to leave Moscow before dawn." "Yuri, I hope you won't let me down." Ephraim narrowed his eyes and smiled. "Or I'm afraid you have to bear my anger before I leave." Yuri took a deep breath and nodded. Tianbai waved his hand and said, "You go ahead, don't play any tricks." Yuri could only turn around, but he knew that the Benelli M1 shotgun was pointed at his back. Follow me." Yelgo easily saw a guy lying on the ground on the road. He might be a man of the manor. He looked at the bloody hole on the man's forehead, subconsciously thinking of a phrase. "One-shot kill." What the hell happened? Yelgo frowned, but quickly reached out and turned over the man's body. Therefore, baby Yelgo easily picked up the equipment on the road. Pistol. He didn't know the situation of the manor, so he could only try to protect himself. Victor. Mr. Victor. He thought of Victor, who was taken away without any news, and worried that he might still be trapped somewhere in the manor. So he gritted his teeth and followed the corpses on the road all the way. All of a sudden, Yelgo heard a loud noise. This kind of explosion might be caused by a powerful weapon, perhaps a hand grenade or something like that. Is this family crazy? How did the security check work? How could they let people pass with such a dangerous thing? Yelgo, who complained in his heart, rushed to the place where the explosion sound came from. But he didn't expect to see a scene that made him feel a little scared on the way. It was a man wearing a black hood. At this moment, he was holding the neck of a man in a white suit with one hand and lifting the other person's body so easily. At the same time, the man in the black hood aimed the automatic rifle at the man in the white suit's chest and shot it out. The bodyguard of the Tipica family in the white suit screamed in pain, and his body was thrown to the ground casually. The man in the black hood slowly turned his face, looking at the flustered Yelgo in the corridor. He twisted his neck and said indifferently, "Is there anyone left?" "Just in time, I don't need to look for it." Yelgo quickly raised the pistol in his hands, pointing at the man, and shouted in a deep voice, Put down your weapon. I'm an agent of the 3rd police station. Now I order you to put down your weapon. Agent. Tianzue was confused, but he shook his head. No matter what, we have to clean it up. He walked slowly to Yelgo, calmly and indifferently. Your hands are shaking. You said you're an agent, have you ever shot anyone? Stop. Put down your weapon. I'm going to shoot. Ah. The young investigator gritted his teeth and pulled the trigger abruptly. Bang, bang, bang. 3 bullets were shot on the floor in front of Tianzue, raising a lot of dust, but they didn't hurt Tianzue at all. You're really a rookie. Tianzue shook his head, but his body suddenly rushed forward with extremely fast movements. Tianzue easily punched Yelgo's abdomen, which made Yelgo squat down painfully. Tianzue snorted, grabbing Yelgo's hair, and pointed the automatic rifle at Yelgo's forehead instantly. Unexpectedly, at the same time, Yelgo grasped the barrel of the automatic rifle and tried to stop it from pointing. Well, Tianzue felt a great strength from Yelgo. He couldn't point the muzzle at this guy, but for Tianzue, killing people didn't necessarily need bullets. He snorted, and his knee hit Yelgo's abdomen again. Then he turned around and went to Yelgo's back, and strangled Yelgo's neck with the rifle in his hand. While strangling, he stepped back, dragging Yelgo's body and sliding on the floor. Yelgo could only kick his legs in pain, but he couldn't open the gun barrel on his neck. The fear of his throat being broken made his pupils dilate quickly. Finally, the threat of death made him put aside some scruples. He didn't struggle, but directly grasped Tianzue's hands in front of him. Yelgo suddenly roared. His clothes were directly torn at this moment. He threw the guy with a black headache right in front of him. Ah ah! Yelgo even punched Tianzue's back heavily. He could even feel the bones in Tianzue's back were broken. Seeing that this guy finally fell to the ground motionlessly, Yelgo gasped for breath and collapsed on the ground. Under the light of the corridor, a layer of fine hair began to emerge on Yelgo's face, arms, back and chest exposed by the torn clothes. Yelgo raised his head and calmed himself down. He only felt a kind of beast was crazily spreading in his body, making him extremely painful. He grasped his arms and uttered an extremely painful cry. He didn't notice that Tianzue, who fell to the ground, strangely moved his body at this time. He got up. Tianzue's voice was a little low and weak. You're actually a wolf? No wonder you have such great strength, but it seems that you can't control yourself well. Yelgo raised his head and opened his mouth like a wild beast. His sharp canine teeth were exposed, showing that he was like an injured and hungry wolf. But Tianzue suddenly took out a small iron box from his lapel, opened it, and took out a small syringe with a syringe, saying slowly, "Since you're a wolf, there's no other way. If possible, I don't want to use this kind of thing, after all." Tianzue directly inserted the syringe into his neck. Injection. In the syringe, the light blue liquid was injected into Tianzue's body. Just in a moment, Tianzue's eyes suddenly turned upside down, and a lot of blood vessels protruded on his face. He seemed to be enduring a great deal of pain as well. He also let out a low growl. The muscles on his body swelled up in an instant. But anyway, the feeling of this power is wonderful. Tianzue's body seemed to be bigger. He suddenly jumped up and fell in front of Yelgo, punching toward Yelgo's head. Bang! It was a figure that flew out from the corridor, and then another figure rushed out from the corridor, and the two were soon entangled together. Well, it seemed that this kind of medicine was the standard for the members of Michael Club. Looking at the two inhuman bodies entangled with each other, Boss Luo couldn't help but think with interest. But although it was interesting, and even interesting to see the duel between the drug man of Michael Club and the wild werewolf agent, the boss of the club directly went into the interior of the manor. In fact, Luocio just thought that the two guys would fight for a long time. And Anna, who followed behind Luocio and Yu Yi, had no time to be frightened by the scene in front of her, so she quickly followed them. At first, she just didn't want to die like this, and let all her efforts be in vain. But when she looked at it from a bystander's point of view, she knew that there were some things that she needed to do. Chapter 298. Did the terrorists of Chechen come here? It had been a few minutes since Vicar entered the manor. Since he entered the manor, he had a creepy feeling. Are you scared when you see the tragic dead bodies on the way? But Vera didn't seem to be afraid at all. Even though Vicar knew that there was something inhuman about this woman, he couldn't help persuading her. Miss Vera, you've seen the situation here. Let's retreat. Unexpectedly, Vera frowned at this moment. She sniffed in the air. I smell something disgusting. Vicar looked at the dead body on the ground and nodded subconsciously. Indeed, I also hate the bloody smell. Wait, where are you going? But he could only hear Vera calmly say, I'm talking about the path of the wolf. Wolves? Vicar gave a start, and then his face changed greatly as if he thought of something. You mean wolves? But he didn't need Vera to give him any answer. Because in the next moment, a figure indeed broke the wall and rolled on the ground, right in front of Vera and Vicar. It was a werewolf with hair all over his body, as if he had lost his mind. His hands and feet were on the ground, raising his head and grinning. What's this? However, another huge figure slowly walked out of the broken wall at this time. This appearance made Vicar subconsciously think of a miniature version of the Hulk. Is there anyone else in the way? The giant suddenly said with a rough voice. It seemed that he was in a rage, and his voice was like the roar of a prisoner trapped in prison. Obviously, this giant also saw Vicar and Vera. Vicar, you hide first. Vera said calmly at this time, and her pupils gradually changed color. Where are you taking us? Yuri didn't say a word all the way, and Efim had lost his patience. 1 minute. If you can't take us there in 1 minute, you'll go to hell. We've arrived. Yuri, who was covered with cold sweat, turned his head slightly. Out of the corner of his eyes, he could only see Efim and another man with horrible fighting ability. It's the room in front. There's a secret passage in this manor for the convenience of escape. Tianbai nodded, ordering directly, open the door. Yuri nodded, slowly opening the door of this room. It was a study room. Where's the escape passage? Efim asked at this time. Yuri pointed at the desk in the study room. The mechanism is on the desk. Do you see the desk lamp? Move the desk lamp and you can see the button. The passage is behind the bookcase. Efim narrowed her eyes and suddenly said, Very well, move the desk lamp now. Seeing Yuri's hesitation look, Efim pointed at the back of his head and said in a low voice, Go. Yuri could only raise his hands, slowly walking toward the desk step by step. When he came to the desk, Yuri turned around and looked at Efim and Tianbai. A drop of cold sweat began to slide down from his hair to his neck. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Hurry up! Tianbai snorted, pulling the Benelli M1 in his hand, and the sound of loading was unusually loud. Right at this time, Yuri squatted down, hiding himself under the desk, and opened a drawer of the desk, where there was a pistol. In fact, there were weapons hidden in many secret corners of this manor. But as a fake heir, it was impossible for him to know where they were. But obviously, he had found the pistol in the study room long ago. Yuri held the pistol and gasped for breath. He tried his best to calm himself down. How dare you cheat? The sound of footsteps was approaching him step by step. Ah! Yuri suddenly shouted, rushing out from the side of the desk, and pulled the trigger of the pistol. Bang bang! Bang bang bang! Anna had unknowingly rushed to the front of Luochio and Yu Yi, running forward quickly, but she soon stopped. Because she finally found that she had overtaken the club boss and Miss Servant Girl. This might be the last thing she wanted, but she had to admit it. Can't you walk faster? Miss Anna. Luochio said calmly. Are you sure you want the next product? Mr. Yuri has less than a month to live. Are you sure you want to use part of your soul to exchange for the money to help him survive this crisis? If I continue to make requests, you will be able to obtain my soul faster. Isn't that what you want to see the most? Anna sneered at this time. Luochu shook his head. No, I mean, Miss Anna, you can use the remaining money to buy something better for you. For example, lifespan. Looking at Anna, Luochu said indifferently, Miss Anna, you should know that you should be dead, and the reason why you are still alive is that your soul exchange fee is consumed every second. I mean, the more you use, the less lifespan you can buy. Of course, for a person who is supposed to die, even if she uses her soul, the lifespan won't be much. But because of this, the soul exchange fee is particularly precious. Seeing Anna was silent, Luochu said slowly, for example, if you can buy 3 years of lifespan, but after these consumption, you only have 2 years left. Of course, I'm just giving an example. Yes. Confirmed. Decided. Can you act now? I see. Luochu nodded. Then I'll act according to your wish. Luochu passed by Anna, but he didn't move forward even one step. There was a closed door in front of him, but he just raised his hand at this time. Slowly, he changed the situation inside the door. Bang bang bang. Bang bang. Only to hear 5 consecutive gunshots in the room. At the moment of the gunshots, Anna suddenly turned back, looking at the door. When the gunshots had completely quieted down, Anna nervously clenched her hands and put them in front of her lips. It was very quiet, very quiet. How much time had passed? She didn't have the courage to move forward even one step, let alone to open the door in front of her. She just looked. How much time had passed? Only to hear a click, that was the sound of the door lock being unlocked, and a figure slowly appeared. Open the door, close the door, that was Yuri. His face was covered with blood, drop by drop, like the paint from the paintbrush. His eyes were empty, and the gun in his hand was pointed vertically at the ground. He walked like this, step by step, as if he was dragging his own body. He could only see this corridor, even if there were 3 other figures in this corridor. But no matter Luochu, the maid, or even Anna, they were all in a state of being invisible. He still walked like this step by step. He didn't know that someone was watching him when he passed by Anna. She knew that he couldn't see her, so she stretched out her palm, wanting to stroke the scattered hair on his face or wipe the blood on his face. But she didn't dare, her fingers stopped in the air. She let him walk by her like this, like a walking dead, until he finally disappeared in this corridor. She got through this danger. Until she covered her lips with both hands, trying to block the cry, until she weakly leaned against the wall. Until she looked at Luochu, saying sadly like a child, "How I want to tell him, I never wanted to kill him, how I want to tell him, but I can't let him know, I can't let him know that his revenge is meaningless. Because I know, from the moment I chose to shoot, from the moment I met him in front of the art gallery." Chapter 299. It seems to have stopped? Or it didn't stop. Yuri didn't know. He just subconsciously walked into the studio. The second painting, The Nameless Maiden, was painted here. In fact, he had spent a lot of time here before the start of the second auction. Yuri grabbed a bottle of wine that he didn't know the name of. After biting open the oak cork, he drank it quickly and fiercely. He sat down on the chair. About 30 minutes or 40 minutes ago, he was taken away by Edgar from here. But now, Ephraim was dead, and the man with the hood, whose name he didn't even know, was also dead. In this manner, probably many people died. Yuri slowly closed his eyes. A few minutes ago, the scene of shooting and killing people flashed through his mind. "You dare to cheat?" Ephraim snorted. He also thought that this guy would play some tricks. But compared with that, Ephraim hoped that Yuri could take him to find the heir of the Tipica family, the guy who made him fall into such a situation. "You're dead." Ephraim snorted. Tianzue didn't say anything. Compared with Ephraim, he was more willing to clean up the obstacles and send Ephraim, who was like a human-shaped wild boar, away in the shortest time to complete the task. The loaded Benelli M1 shotgun was pointed straight at the desk. For him, there was no need to wait for the person to be exposed. The split bullets were enough to directly penetrate the person and the desk. Killing people was more like a daily behavior for him. When he was hungry, he needed to eat. When he needed to kill, then he would kill. With a slight pull of his finger, he had already felt the backward movement of the trigger. At this time, Yuri suddenly roared and rushed out from behind the desk. He's quite brave, Tianzue faintly thought. But even so, this guy would be shot into a hornet's nest. Ah, it's so boring, this delivery task. In an instant Tianzue thought of many things, but at the same time, his entire body was filled with an unprecedented fear. He didn't know where this feeling of fear came from. The only thing he knew was that his body, from his eyelids to his finger that was pulling the trigger, had completely stiffened at this moment. His body was also stiff. Only his thoughts, at this time, seemed to accelerate infinitely, reaching a state of high-speed operation. But he still couldn't move his body. He could even clearly see the bullet fired from Yuri's pistol, and then accurately shot between his eyes. He felt pain, an experience that he had never experienced before. The things that appeared in Heavenly Crime's mind seemed to have reached their limits at this moment. Finally, he thought of the essence of this situation, a revolving door. Every movement seemed to have been slowed down countless times. Tianzue's body fell straight backwards. The moment he landed, the elasticity of his muscles even made his body bounce slightly. It raised the dust hidden in the carpet of the study. Bang, bang, bang. 3 or 4 gunshots. This was the last sound he heard in this world. Why couldn't he move? He didn't know. He only knew that the lighting on the ceiling of this study seemed to be quite beautiful. Tianzue died. Where was Ephraim? At this time, Ephraim opened his eyes wide, and his hands subconsciously covered his stomach. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't block the bright red liquid that flowed out of his body. His body suddenly twitched. He stretched out his hands, seeming to find something to support his body, but he didn't find it. Yes, he didn't find it, so he fell to the ground. One of the bullets even penetrated his chest. Ephraim opened his eyes wide. That was a kind of terrifying look before death. In fact, he couldn't see anything, only darkness in front of him. But he could feel that Yuri was beside him. Ephraim suddenly grabbed Yuri's clothes with his blood-stained palms and pulled them. Both of their eyes were extremely wide open. Their heavy auras were like gunpowder that could explode at any moment, like needles against wheat. You won't have a good time. My end. Blood gushed out from Ephraim's mouth. Is your end. I curse you. I curse you. Yuri abruptly opened his eyes. Ephraim's eyes seemed to be less than 10 centimeters away from his eyes before he died, as if he was still watching him. Both of them are dead. He held his forehead with his hand and suddenly laughed. His laughter was low and deep, and as he laughed, it seemed to turn into the sound of crying. My end is your end. This sentence actually came true. It wouldn't take long for Yuri to know that he would close his eyes forever. He suddenly recalled the day he came to this city, and then the days after that, one day after another. If one were to say that he really had a talent, then perhaps it was this talent that had caused all of this. Was there no shortcut to success? Was Anna abominable? But if he hadn't come to this city for more than a year and was still mediocre and eager for a chance, he wouldn't have agreed to fake it so easily. Blame himself? Was he wrong? Should he be a street painter down to earth? Would he succeed in the end? But now, his enemies were all dead, and he didn't have much life left. What could he do with the remaining time? Enjoy crazily, and enjoy the life of a rich man to the extreme before he died? Then how painful would it be before he died? Counting his remaining time day by day. How painful would it be? Suddenly, Yuri absent-mindedly raised the pistol that was still in his hand. He knew there was still a bullet left here, and his gaze was like a patient suffering from Alzheimer's disease. Slowly, Yuri opened his mouth, and gradually inserted the muzzle into his temple. He finally closed his eyes and then buckled his fingers. In the face of counting down his life, he chose to end himself. Bang! It was over. It was over. But he could still open his eyes, and there was no pain as he imagined. He could still see everything around him so clearly. Yuri subconsciously turned his head. He realized that a palm had appeared on his face at some point in time. And the owner of the palm was the boss of the club. The power of this 6-magazine pistol is indeed not bad. From Boss Luo's palm, a bullet slowly fell to the ground. Yuri subconsciously looked at the bullet that fell to the ground, and couldn't help but reveal a trace of anger. Why did you stop me? You can take away my soul without waiting for the end of the time. Don't you want to? If you peek into the future, neither you nor I will know. Luocio said softly, what will happen in the future will be known. For example, overlay transaction. What? Yuri showed a blank look. At this time, Luocio gently snapped his fingers, and Yuri closed his eyes and directly fell to the ground. At this time, Anna slowly walked out from behind Luocio. She squatted down and reached out to touch Yuri's face. It seems that Miss Anna really loves Mr. Yuri. She even made such a request, Luocio said softly. Anna raised her head and shook it. Do you know what love is? Luocio gave a start. It seemed to be the first time that someone asked him such a question. He shook his head directly. Really? Anna smiled slowly. But I think I shouldn't love this man, but anyway, I feel that I owe him. Anna took a deep breath. Isn't it ridiculous? I clearly know that before all this happened, his love for me. I thought I could let myself fall in love with him, at least as a compensation? Or just a response. But later I understood that this was not love at all, and I shouldn't be loved. I just felt guilty. She stood up. Then, I planned to do something to really compensate him. Since I should have died, and Efim finally died in Yuri's hands, although it was a bit different from what I expected. Anna shook her head. You know what? I actually had a lot of chances to kill Efim directly. She showed a very coquettish smile. After all, in my opinion, this guy was still very obsessed with my body, but killing him directly was not what I wanted. If he died, the mining area would only have one owner at most. If there was no way to dig out the connection between the owner and the mining area, and let the public opinion of this country completely wash away the filth between them, the next one would come after the death of Efim, and there would be no end at all. But since Efim died, I should also die then. Let's put an end to this matter. Anna looked at Yuri on the ground, faintly saying, after all, he's just a poor person who was implicated. He can actually pursue his own dream. And I believe that with his talent, as long as he's given enough time, he'll shine and become a very good painter. You can also choose to achieve your original goal, Boss Luo suddenly said. Anna chuckled. She just felt ridiculous. You're really a weirdo. You've repeatedly provided me with choices that I shouldn't refuse for the sake of my interests. You seem to be very willing to see me make all the choices that are beneficial to me. Luocio said indifferently, because we're on the side of customers. Then you're a failure as a boss. Anna shook her head. Some things, people just like to do things that harm themselves and benefit others. I see. Luocio nodded. He slightly opened his hands in front of him, and an old sheepskin scroll appeared out of thin air. It slowly floated to Anna and then opened. If Miss Anna feels there's no problem with the requirements on the contract, you can sign it. Anna gently pressed her palm on the contract. Master, are you unhappy? Miss Maid saw that her master was a little bit silent at this time. She accompanied Luocio to stand at the highest position of the manor and watched what happened below for several minutes. But Boss Luo didn't say a word. The thoughtful Miss Maid quickly thought that he could always intervene in some subtle things to make some changes in the previous time. But this time, he didn't seem to intervene too much. Unhappy? Luocio turned his head and looked at Yu Yi curiously. Why? Miss Maid said softly. because the quality of Miss Anna's soul hasn't changed much since the moment she was rescued. If I have to say, it's even decreased a little, right? Luochu smiled. We've been together for some time. I'm not the type to scold you when I hear something bad. Yes. Master's tolerance towards me is something that makes me happy. Yu Yi softly responded and then hesitated, but Miss Anna's contract, of course, according to the customer's request. Luochu slowly said, first of all, deal with the matter of this manner. Boss Luo seemed to cheer up all of a sudden, chuckling. At the beginning, I thought that the werewolf and the medicine man wouldn't be finished so quickly. Not only that, but also a new character. Yu Yi casually looked at Tianbai, Yelgo and Vera on the ground. She didn't think there was anything interesting about this ridiculous fighting force. However, since her master was showing an expression of interest as an excellent maid, she should accompany him, be happy with him, and even give him some entertainment. Master, look, this Miss Vera seems to have learned Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Her movements are… For Vera, encountering such an obviously abnormal guy was not something to be happy about, especially when there was another person in the group. Well, perhaps he was also the kind of guy who couldn't control the wolf bloodline in his body well. He should have completely lost his mind now. Vera quickly looked at Yelgo, who was completely in a beast state, and then looked at the giant in front of her. This is too exciting. Vera quickly shuttled through the manor. Yes, she had memorized the structure of this manor when she was here last time. Obviously, she didn't get lost this time. But what was worse than getting lost was that she had to fall into a weird chaotic fight with the giant and the wolf, who had lost his mind. However, she had no choice but to admit that she was the weakest among the three of them if she did not use the power that she thought was dirty when facing the strange giant that possessed inhuman strength and the wolf that had lost its rationality. If you weren't a wolf, I wouldn't care about this matter. Vera quickly glanced at the guy who pounced on the giant and crazily bit him, frowning and thinking. Then, where was it? The studio?